Chapter 375. On the west side of the Grand Xia, Marquis Triumphant, the Golden Staff State Preceptor, the Abbot of Du Yi Temple, and the Eternal Night Hierarch appeared in front of the Extreme Sky Array. At the side, the wheelchair creaked as Meng Xuanji pushed Ning Chen over. She stopped in front of the formation and observed the situation. "When do we go in?" Marquis Triumphant asked. "Let's wait until dawn," Ning Chen said calmly as he looked at the blood moon in the west. The power of the Nether King could only be felt when the moon rose. Even Qianqiu had chosen to set up the array at night. There couldn't be so many coincidences in the world. There must be a reason that they didn't know. The Eternal Night Hierarch and the others nodded. There was less than 2 hours until dawn, so there was no need to rush. The night was very long. Since the Extreme Sky Array was opened, day and night had become disordered. The 6 of them waited for 2 hours before the sun rose from the east. "Let's go." Light flashed as figures rushed into the array. The Extreme Sky Array that covered half of the Divine Prefecture was facing its most powerful challenge. The path was rugged and difficult. Everyone felt their bodies being suppressed as soon as they entered, and it was getting worse. "Be careful." The Eternal Night Hierarch's expression became serious. He circulated his body to resist the power of the array. The Abbot of Du Yi Temple, the Golden Staff State Preceptor, and Marquis Triumphant also gathered their energy, ready to deal with any danger that might appear at any time. Meng Xuanji pushed Ning Chen in a wheelchair and walked to the side. She was cautious with every step, and her divine sense was highly concentrated. The sky was filled with 3-colored divine light. With the origin of the divine beasts as a guide, it gathered the spiritual energy and faith of the world to form the world's most terrifying Extreme Sky Array. Even though the people present were the top experts of the Divine Prefecture, they didn't dare to be careless. Ning Chen looked at the flickering divine light around him and narrowed his eyes. He didn't say anything as he calmly observed. This time, he wouldn't participate in the battle. However, he had to focus on finding a way to break the array. "Miss Meng, remind me every 100 steps," said Ning Chen. "Okay." Meng Xuanji nodded. As they walked, beams of light fell from the sky one after another. The power of faith from half of the divine land in the west continued to gather. It was far more powerful than the power of faith in the Buddhist land. It pressed down on everyone, making it difficult for them to move. Ning Chen calmed himself down and carefully calculated the steps and the changes in the power of faith. No formation could be perfect. The key was whether they could find the weakness of the formation. Not a single person. After walking for a long time, the Golden Staff Imperial Advisor frowned slightly. The injuries in his body worsened again. Drops of blood seeped through his fingers and dyed his clothes red. Meng Xuanji was shocked. She condensed her vital energy and was about to suppress his injuries. "Not now." Ning Chen reached out and stopped her. He endured the pain in his chest and said. Now, he could not have any vital energy in his body. With the interference, he could not clearly feel the strength of the formation's suppression on his cultivation techniques. "Everyone, welcome to the Extreme Sky Formation." At this moment, light gathered in the void, and a figure in purple appeared. The young and handsome face was so familiar. It was the long-lost second hierarch of Eternal Night Hierarch, Zong Qianqiu. "Who's up?" The Golden Staff Imperial Preceptor looked at the figure floating in the sky and said coldly. "Amitabha, this poor monk will do it." The Abbot of Du Yi Temple chanted. He stomped his feet and his Buddha body rose. The revered one of the world's teachings suppressed the evil. Golden light gathered, and the image of the revered one of the world's Tathagata appeared. The revered one of the world's mantras was spoken and suppressed the second hierarch of Eternal Night Hierarch. "Buddha in the mortal world, you can only be a Buddha in the mortal world." Zong Qianqiu sneered. He moved lightly and instantly appeared in front of the Buddha body. He flipped his palm and slapped down. With a loud bang, the Buddha body collapsed. The indestructible Vajra body of Buddhism was broken. Blood spurted out and scattered in the 9 heavens. Below, the 5 people were shocked. Marquis triumphant return moved, and the glorious Era saber appeared. The magnificent Era saber slashed down, and then the Buddha in the mortal world was retreated. Zong Qianqiu waved his hand to disperse the saber light. His eyes were cold as he looked at the people below. How can he be so capable? The Golden Staff Imperial Preceptor said in a deep voice. The second hierarch of Eternal Night Hierarch was not known for his martial strength. He was proficient in magic arts. Now that he had such terrifying martial strength, it was really shocking. Ning Chen stood up, and with a wave of his hand, the King of Hell's divine sword appeared in his hand. He moved, and in the blink of an eye, he appeared in front of the Buddha in the mortal world. With a clang, a drop of blood dripped down from the Buddha's right shoulder. Everyone was shocked at first, but when they came back to their senses, their expressions changed. How could this be? With the Marquis Jiming's heavily injured body, how could he break the indestructible Vajra body of the abbot of Du Yi Temple? Ning Chen put away his sword and returned to his wheelchair. He coughed violently a few times. Obviously, the attack just now had put a lot of burden on his body. It's not that Zong Qianqiu has become stronger, but that everyone has become weaker. Our bodies have been suppressed, and that's why we have this illusion. Now that the situation is unclear, other than the hierarch and Marquis triumphant return, try not to fight head-on. Ning Chen endured his injuries and warned everyone based on his own judgment. Marquis triumphant return had the glorious battle armor protecting him, so his attacks were limited. However, his defense wouldn't be weakened too much. Furthermore, according to his estimate, even if the Eternal Night Hierarch's cultivation base was suppressed, he could still maintain the strength of a 3-disaster level expert. Why aren't you affected? Asked the Golden Staff Imperial Tutor. It's not that I'm not affected. It's just that my body is special. It has a divine beast origin similar to this formation, so the suppression is a bit smaller, said Ning Chen tiredly. The Marquis Jiming, not being able to get rid of you back then was indeed our biggest mistake. However, today we can make up for that regret. Before he even finished speaking, Bai Jiang walked out, his black aura surging. It was unknown how many times stronger he was than the last time he had appeared. Sensing the familiar aura from Bai Jiang, the Eternal Night Hierarch's expression turned cold. His eyes were filled with killing intent. You stole Chu Li's body. So what? Even in death, she'll be with me, said Bai Jiang coldly. The Eternal Night Hierarch could no longer tolerate this. His feet moved, and his smoke cloud divine halberd appeared. You're too weak right now. With a mocking laugh, Bai Jiang clenched his fist and used bloodshed heavenly tears. Dazzling sword light shot out. With a bang, the sword and halberd clashed. Killing light flew everywhere. The two people clashing did not show the slightest bit of mercy. Every move they made was meant to kill the other. Bai Jiang, who had used Chu Li's body to recover from his injuries, had reached his peak. On the other hand, the Eternal Night Hierarch was suppressed by the formation. Even with his halberd, it was difficult for him to gain the upper hand. Hua Zhuang, Remnant Wind, it's time for you to come out, said Zong Qianqiu. Yes, Palace Master. Two figures appeared. Halberd and sword light shot toward the red-robed youth in the wheelchair. Meng Xuanji's expression turned cold. She waved her golden feather saber, condensing vast yuan in her palms. On the other side, Marquis Triumphant Return and the Golden Staff Imperial Tutor were working together to fight Zong Qianqiu. A sea of lightning surged. A battle of martial power and magical arts had just begun. At the same time, in Desolate City to the east of the Grand Xia, two peak experts were also facing each other. The stifling atmosphere made it hard for people to breathe. Swordsman, you destroyed my pagoda. Do you think I should take revenge? Asked Luo Xingchen. Of course, said Mu Bai calmly. Ha, that's good. Let my Stars Car Bao experience your martial arts. With a flip of his hand, the Stars Car Bao appeared. Starlight filled the sky, and an ancient and heavy bow appeared. The bow's body was carved with the stars of the 9 heavens. It possessed an extraordinary might. When the star's car bow appeared in his hand, it began to shine brilliantly. The moment the bow was drawn, the winds and clouds of the 9 heavens changed. An arrow shot out. In the blink of an eye, it had arrived. After the first arrow, another arrow shot out, and then a third arrow. Chasing star and chasing moon. 3 arrows shot toward swordsman's heart. The Zhao family's genius might only be at the second calamity realm, but his battle prowess was unquestionably on par with the Zhao family's third calamity experts. Today, he had drawn his bow and fought a legend. Within the sword pool, the primal chaos sword essence floated up and down. In front of the sword pool, Mubai raised his hand. Sword intent gathered around him. Chapter 376. The soundless sword chi condensed into the sharpness of heaven and earth. It tore through the air with an unstoppable momentum, instantly breaking through the 2 arrows and colliding with the last moon-chasing arrow. The sword chi was sharp and dazzling, but the arrow's radiance also became stronger and stronger. The most extreme collision caused the air to surge, constantly swirling around the sword pool. The floating sword was still indifferent. With a bang, the sword chi and the arrow's radiance shattered at the same time, bringing about boundless turbulence that scattered in all directions. Extraordinary swordsman, are you still not going to use your sword? Falling Star's body moved, turning into thousands of afterimages. The arrow's radiance flickered, one after another appearing in the sky and falling towards Mubai. Sword style, one sword of 10,000 calamities. The heaven-proving sword style roared and surged, endlessly rising. The sword's radiance spiraled, blocking the arrow's radiance. Right at this moment, an arrow with a completely different aura broke through the sword's radiance and brushed past the swordsman's left arm. With a ripping sound, his white clothes were torn apart, and traces of blood flowed out. Desolate City's undefeatable sword actually saw red for the first time. Sword style, one sword of limitless distance. The swordsman was calm, and his expression did not change. The limitless distance sword appeared, the world's fastest sword. Wherever the will was, the sword would follow. It broke through the limits of space, and a white shadow streaked across the sky. In the blink of an eye, it had cut through thousands of afterimages. Within the shattered afterimages, Falling Star retreated 30 meters. Looking at the white-robed swordsman in front of him, the corner of his mouth curled up slightly. What a fast sword! Only an opponent like this was worthy of him using his full strength. Opening the arrow box, a green arrow flew out. Star Mark drew his bow, and in the blink of an eye, the wind-riding arrow had already arrived in front of Mubai. Mubai used his fingers to catch the arrow, and the moment he broke the arrow, another arrow appeared within the arrow. The golden arrow's radiance broke through the limits and pierced through his body. Ah! Mubai retreated half a step. Fresh blood dripped from his shoulder, dyeing his white clothes red. If you don't use your sword, you can't complain about your death. 3 arrows split the sky, and streams of light appeared in an instant. Falling Star turned his palm and drew his bow. The 3 arrows interweaved with dazzling light, and the pressure of the true third calamity shook the world. It surpassed the attack of the Eternal Night Hierarch, proving Desolate City's legend. Mubai waved his hand, and the sword pool's water droplets. Water droplets flew out and condensed into 3 swords, directly meeting with the 3 arrows. With a bang, the water splashed everywhere. The arrow was unstoppable and once again closed in on him. Formless sword. Mubai pressed his fingers together to catch the sword. Tens of thousands of sword streams converged, and the 3 arrows' radiance scattered, vanishing into nothingness. However, right at this moment, a scarlet arrow appeared. The penetrating crimson divine arrow that had injured several big shots of the Zhao family in the past had reappeared in the divine continent today. The long tail of the arrow cut through the void like a demonic star, pressing towards them. The young master of West Buddha had suppressed the legend of the divine sword. The unbelievable battle had reached its peak under the terrifying red arrow. Even though Mubai was injured one after another, his expression was still as calm as before. Facing this powerful arrow, He had no thoughts, no desires, and no desires. The world of swords spread out. Heaven and earth became solemn. Mountain rocks, ruined walls, pond water, and 10,000 things transformed into swords, all of them welcomed the arrow. With a ping sound, the two weapons collided. The crimson-piercing divine arrow pierced through the air, directly entering the swordsman's chest. Mubai retreated, his mouth overflowing with blood. The crimson-piercing divine arrow flew out, returning to the arrow box. After one arrow, the invincible sword of Baron City was defeated. The powerful cultivators of the divine prefecture are nothing more than this. Luo Xingchen waved his hand and put away his bow. He turned around and left. His purple and white clothes fluttered in the wind. After 2 steps, he disappeared. Master! Jian Er walked out. Looking at the figure in front of the sword pool, his eyes were filled with worry. His master had actually been defeated. This was something he had never expected. The battle just now was too abnormal. His master's strength should not be limited to this. Mu Bai was silent. Looking at the swords in the sword pool, his heart was complicated. Was this the taste of a defeated sword? Master, why don't you use your sword? Jian Er did not understand. It's not that I don't want to, it's that I can't. Mu Bai sighed softly. He waved his hand to retrieve his sword. However, the sword did not move. It floated up and down in the sword pool as if it did not feel anything. Jian Er's pupils shrank. The sword did not recognize its master. How could it be like this? Mu Bai looked at the academy in the west. A trace of confusion flashed through his calm eyes. For the first time, his sword heart was no longer clear. In Tiansong Academy, the teacher tiredly tidied up the ancient books on the bookshelves. One by one, he swept away the dust on them. The Tao of the sword was like rowing a boat against the current. If you didn't advance, you would fall back. Mu Bai's sword had already reached the peak. No one could guide him. No one knew how to walk the rest of his path. Every moth had to go through the process of spinning a cocoon to become a butterfly. He and Dao Kuei had also gone through this difficult period. Now, it was up to Mu Bai to see if he could walk out of it and regain the clarity of his sword heart. At the same time, in the west of the Grand Xia, Ning Chen and the others who had come to break the formation had also encountered quite a bit of trouble. Marquis Triumphant Return and the Golden Staff Imperial Tutor were working together to fight against Zhong Qianqiu. A sea of lightning surged, and the Fiend God stood tall. This was the most extreme confrontation between martial arts and magical arts. On the other side, the Eternal Knight Sect Master was fighting against the head of the Martial Crown Sect. Due to his past enmity, he was even more ruthless. In the final battle, Meng Xuanji was fighting against 2 opponents. She blocked all the dangers before knowing destiny. Her golden feather danced, blocking the combined might of Hua Zhuang and Remnant Wind. Outside of the battle, the abbot of Du Yi Temple closed his eyes to heal his injuries. He was seizing the time to recover his battle strength. The outcome of this battle was unpredictable. He had to suppress the injuries on his body as soon as possible. The 5 of them were restrained and couldn't escape. On the wheelchair, Ning Chen kept coughing lightly. He resisted the urge to faint and forced himself to stay awake. Just a little more. He couldn't let all his efforts go to waste now. The wheelchair creaked as it moved away from the battle. According to the distance and the changes in his body, he calculated the strength of every part of the formation. Knowing Destiny's mind worked faster than ever before. He calculated the distribution of the power of faith in the formation bit by bit. The wheel imprints on the wheelchair crisscrossed in the formation like a chessboard. Upon closer inspection, it wasn't in the shape of a square. The wheel imprints that extended in one direction weren't parallel. After extending, they actually faintly converged in one place. In the sky, Zhong Qianqiu's gaze swept across the ground. His expression changed slightly. He turned his palm and condensed Yuan energy, pushing the 2 away. His figure flashed and rushed towards the figure on the wheelchair. Bai Jiang, don't fight. Kill Marquis Jiming first. The urgent voice showed Zhong Qianqiu's uneasiness. How could there be such a smart person in the world? Zhong Qianqiu didn't know how Marquis Jiming figured it out. However, the place where the wheelchair imprints extended to was the weakest part of the ultimate sky formation. Hearing this, Bai Jiang swung his sword and broke away from the battle. He also rushed towards Marquis Jiming in the distance. On the wheelchair, Ning Chen was at the critical moment of his calculation. He was highly focused and didn't realize the danger. When he came back to his senses, the two were already in front of him. Marquis Jiming, give me your life. The vast power of the palm struck down with killing intent. At this moment, Zhong Qianqiu's fear of the young man on the wheelchair reached an unprecedented level. His palm carried infinite killing intent and was about to end Jiming's life. At the critical moment, a beautiful figure stood in front of him. With a bang, the palm imprinted on the woman's back. Jiming's vision was dyed red. Drops of warm blood dripped down from Jiming's face. The most heart-wrenching scene made the man on the wheelchair completely stunned. After a short delay, Marquis triumphant returned and the State Master with the golden staff finally arrived. The glorious era military saber cut the line of life and death and forced Zhong Qianqiu to retreat. Bai Jiang also arrived. The bloody sky tears led a fierce killing light to Jiming again. The State Master with the golden staff blocked the attack with his staff. With a bang, he retreated a dozen steps and vomited vermilion blood. At the same time, the Yongye hierarch rushed to block Bai Jiang's path and separated the battle again. The change happened in an instant, so fast that no one had time to react. The woman fell powerlessly to the ground like a fallen leaf, without a sound. Miss Meng. Ning Chen was absent-minded. His numb heart didn't even feel pain. He stared blankly at the woman in his arms. Blood kept dripping down from his face. Why? Why? Every question pierced knowing Destiny's heart. The more he owed, the more his heart was torn apart. The remaining wind and the tip of Hua Zhuang's halberd attacked. The figure on the wheelchair sat up. Violent killing intent rippled out from his body. The bloody mist dyed the surrounding Tenjiang red. The phoenix origin burned and blood chi surged. Fiery wolves surged one after another. The Yama sword was in his hand. The killing intent shook the world. You all deserve to die. Jiming lost his mind. His eyes were red. His figure disappeared in an instant. A dazzling bloody light streaked across the sky and blocked the sword. Before the sword fell and his soul returned, his head flew up. Blood spurted everywhere. Jiming, who burned his origin, bloomed with the brightest light of life. It was so fast that it was shocking and painful. Bai Jiang was shocked. He waved his sword to block the way. However, the figure flashed past in an instant. No one could stop it. The red figure rushing toward Zhong Qianqiu attracted a killing intent. It was so fast that no one could stop it. Hall Master. Hua Zhuang was shocked. He hurried back to help, but it was too late. The Yama sword's bloody light was dazzling. The heavy phoenix origin gathered and the sword broke through the sea of lightning and fire. Zhong Qianqiu's mind was shaken. He turned his palm to block the sword. The sword's momentum changed in an instant. The death light pierced through his shoulder, bringing with it a large amount of blood. A moment later, it turned back and pierced through his body. Fast, it was still fast. Zhong Qianqiu blocked one sword and was hit several times. He couldn't block the killing intent. Each sword was faster and fiercer than the last. Hua Zhuang and Bai Jiang rushed to help. Marquis triumphant returned, the Golden Staff Imperial Tutor, and the Eternal Night Hierarch worked together to stop the two. They were shocked and worried at the same time. The Golden Staff Imperial Tutor was especially worried. Back on Fengqi Mountain, when the phoenix burned its phoenix origin, Ning Chen's situation was exactly the same. Jiming Marquis, you will never be able to protect the people you cherish. How ironic. Blood kept flowing out of Zhong Qianqiu's mouth. His handsome face flashed with mockery. His crazy laughter echoed in the formation. It was ear-piercing and heart-piercing. The King of Hell, the King of Hell. The purple sword edge had been dyed red by blood. Sword after sword, blood splattered everywhere. However, the irreversible regret had left wounds on knowing Destiny's heart. In the bloody light, the sword pierced through his heart. Blood gushed out, dyeing the sky and Jiming's eyes red. The blood was boiling, but it couldn't warm Jiming's cold heart. Could it be that Jiming should be lonely in his life? Chapter 377. My king, ha! Blood splashed and a piercing laughter echoed in the formation. In the next moment, Zhong Qianqiu's body collapsed rapidly. The sharp sword qi exploded and blood and bones filled the sky, falling like rain and dyeing the ground red. Zhong Qianqiu's death made Bai Zhang's expression change greatly. Black qi surged around his body and the green blood qi shone fiercely. He stepped out of the battle and rushed toward knowing Destiny. Seeing this, Marquis triumphant return waved his saber and slashed out. The ground collapsed and separated, cutting off the path ahead. The saber and the sword clashed. Marquis triumphant return took several blows and the corner of his mouth turned red. The location of the formation is 17 miles north of here, across the intersection of the 9 infants and Swanee light pillars. Within the thick blood fog, Ning Chen, who was covered in a dazzling blood light, spoke. His voice penetrated the blood fog and spread to everyone present. As soon as he finished speaking, the red light disappeared in the blink of an eye. It was shockingly fast and appeared in front of Bai Jiang. You guys go and break the formation. The tip of the sword burned to the extreme. The final brilliance was dazzling. Knowing Destiny moved to kill, ruthless, heartless, and emotionless. The extremely fast speed and the cold killing light made the head of the martial crown not dare to be careless. He waved his green blood heaven's tears and faced Yama's divine weapon head-on. The two swords clashed. Yama's divine sword turned instantly, using speed to overcome strength. The red clothes fluttered and the afterimages of the red light were too much for the eyes to take in. Leave this woman to me. You guys go. The abbot of Du Yi Temple supported his injured body and opened the Buddha world to block Hua Zhuang. Take care. The hierarch of Eternal Night sighed. He didn't want to waste the time that knowing Destiny had bought by burning his life. He rushed toward the place that the latter mentioned. The abbot of Du Yi Temple and Marquis triumphant return also suppressed the heaviness in their hearts and moved quickly to follow. In order to stop Yama's descent, so many people had been sacrificed. At the last moment, they couldn't hesitate anymore. Bai Zhang's expression changed and wanted to stop them. However, Yama's divine sword was aiming for death. Every move was like a path to hell. Marquis, you're courting death. Bai Jiang Nu was infuriated, the surrounding black aura surged, the sword tip emitting a dazzling jade light, the power of 10,000 caddies shook the heavens and the earth. The ground rumbled and collapsed, and large chunks of earth and stone rose up. The head of the martial crown used its ultimate move. Everything collapsed, and heaven and earth sank. The terrifying might contained everything within a radius of 3 kilometers. Ning Chen couldn't dodge the powerful shockwave that covered a large area. The shockwave hit his body. Instantly, his mouth turned red, and he was injured for the first time. If you want my life, then trade it with yours. The blood flow did not stop, and the sword's momentum did not stop either. The sword that returned was filled with boundless bloody light. In the blink of an eye, the sword saw red, and the heaven and earth were illuminated. The life-knowing cultivator burned his phoenix source to the limit, and his cultivation base rose at an even faster speed. At this point, not even his afterimages could be seen. All that was left were streaks of red light, and in the blink of an eye, a bloody mist filled the sky. The battle between strength and speed reached its peak in the ultimate heaven formation. Riding the wind, it was hard to distinguish between man and sword. The sword moved, the man moved, and the man followed the sword. In the battle at the top, the spiritual yuan of the warriors resonated in the sky. Thousands of invisible chains swayed, which was the recognition of the great Tao to the swordsman. At this moment, everyone in the barren city, the manor of the Marquis of Jiming, and the college seemed to have heard the sound of the swaying chains. Oh! There's an even stronger sword. Luo Xingchen, who had just left the barren city, moved quickly to the west. At the end of his life, the beginning of Jiming's sword of Jiming was flawless, and all the strong cultivators in the world felt this completely different sword heart. Is this his sword? In front of the sword pool, Mu Bai looked to the west and sighed softly. An unwavering sword heart. This brat's persistence impressed him once again. In the manner of the Marquis of Jiming, Mu Qingxue looked to the west. Tears fell from her beautiful eyes unconsciously, and an inexplicable pain lingered in her heart. In the Weiyang Palace, Qing Ning, who was accompanying Zhang Sun to read, suddenly trembled. She bowed to Zhang Sun without showing her emotions, and quietly left. Outside the palace, Qing Ning finally couldn't hold it in anymore. She covered her red lips, and tears dripped down. Her heart felt like it was being stabbed. In the Taoya's stomach, Sui felt the danger of her clone. Her aura became chaotic, and waves of backlash spread from her qi to her main body. Ah! The chaotic true essence brought about a waterfall of blood mist. The clone was connected to the main body, and at this moment, it was also on the verge of death. Ningchen. Jiang Wangji's expression shook. His hands moved, and the guqin played. The two ancient swords, one yin and one yang, spun in reverse, opening the Tao Gate's secret formation. Go against the yin and yang of heaven and earth, turn the 100 qi of the universe into one, return to the origin, and turn life and death into heaven. The Tao Gate's secret formation opened, and yin and yang turned into yin and yang. The two yin and yang gave birth to yin and yang. The spinning ancient swords reversed yin and yang, protecting the two soul flames of Jiming. In the extreme sky grand formation, Hongyi, who was burning her origin energy, reached an unprecedented level of clarity in her sword at the last moment of her life. The sharpness of each sword was stronger than the previous one, making the head of the martial crown feel extreme pressure. God destroys heaven and earth. Bai Jiang channeled the power of the Nether King, and endless black energy surged around his body. The extreme might shook the world, and a violent pressure soared into the sky, sweeping away the clouds and shocking the divine prefecture. As the divine might descended upon him, his red robes turned, and his illusory figure instantly moved. It was impossible to see with the naked eye, and he avoided the streams of air that approached him. Just as Jiming was burning his life to buy time, the eternal night hierarch, Marquis triumphant returned, and the golden staff imperial tutor arrived at the weak point of the formation that Ningchen had mentioned. In the twisting void, a huge pitch-black vortex floated up and down. No one knew where it led, but a terrifying pressure was faintly discernible. It was enough to make one's heart tremble. That's it. The eternal night hierarch looked at the spatial vortex in front of him and said solemnly. Time is of the essence. Destroy it. Marquis triumphant return held his saber and gathered his true essence. The golden staff imperial tutor nodded. His golden staff spun rapidly, and true essence gathered around his body. The golden ring rang, and his lifetime of cultivation was used in this most important move. The three worked together, and their true essence temporarily suppressed the power of the formation. 3 streams of light gathered in one place and slashed at the black vortex in the void. A shocking explosion shook the formation, and the vortex cracked open. Just as it was about to succeed, the power of faith of half of the divine land gathered in the formation and quickly stabilized the center of the formation. Black feathers fluttered, and the power of faith gathered into an illusory figure. Its face couldn't be seen clearly, but an extremely terrifying aura circulated, suppressing heaven and earth. Seeing the figure formed by the power of faith, the three's expressions immediately sank. This was troublesome. The demonic god appeared, and its disdainful gaze was emotionless. It turned its palm over and pressed down with shocking power. The eternal night hierarch took a step forward, and the smoke cloud divine spear collapsed, blocking the demonic god's palm. With a bang, he was forced back several steps. The corner of his mouth was stained with blood, showing his unshakable power. The demonic god moved again. Marquis triumphant returned and the golden staff imperial tutor blocked it together. With a loud bang, blood splashed all over the sky. Both of them were severely injured and were sent flying. 17 miles away, Ning Chen also felt the sudden appearance of a powerful aura. His expression changed, and just as he was about to go and help, he suddenly staggered and vomited a mouthful of blood. At this moment, Ning Chen, who had burned his origin to fight Wu Guan, had finally exhausted his strength. He was like a lamp that had run out of oil. Seeing a crack in the river, Ning Chen's palm condensed powerful vast origin energy and his figure flashed. It came for his life. At this critical moment, a sword shrouded in demonic chi appeared and blocked Wu Guan's palm with a loud clang. "Good friend, I'm late." The white-haired figure with the demonic mark between his eyebrows appeared. Xia Zi and Luofei appeared at the same time. They supported Ning Chen, who was staggering. Go and save them." Ning Chen leaned on the sword and looked at the two of them, saying weakly, "What are you doing here?" Xia Zi asked worriedly. "It's fine. Go quickly, or it'll be too late." Ning Chen pushed Xia Zi away and barely managed to summon the last of his strength. The Yama divine weapon's brilliance sublimated to the extreme. Its light was unprecedentedly dazzling. Seeing that his good friend had made up his mind, Xia Zi sighed. He had to endure the pain in his heart and quickly rushed forward with Luofei. "Do you think you can escape?" Ning Chen's eyes were cold. He swept out the blood jade sword and blocked the path. "If you want to stop me, you have to get through me first." The Yama King's divine sword swept across, blocking the bloodshed divine sword. Fresh blood dripped down from Knowing Fate's arm, dyeing the sword and his red robes red. "Marquis Ning Chen, how long can you hold on?" Ning Chen snorted and stepped forward. The cold light became more and more ruthless. The red clothes moved the sword. Although the sword was still fast, it gradually lost its sharpness. Ning Chen, who had run out of oil, had reached the final stage of his life. At the same time, in front of the space vortex, the Eternal Night Hierarch, Marquis triumphant returned, and the Golden Staff Imperial Preceptor joined forces to fight the demon god. They were also seriously injured and were gradually losing their strength. With the faith of half of the divine land, the demon god was unshakable. His every move shook the heavens. At this moment, Xia Zi and Luofei finally arrived. The demonic sword activated the endless demonic chi in the emperor's body. The sword reincarnated and the world darkened. With a loud bang, the emperor's mouth turned red. He moved the sword again and the demonic chi surged for thousands of feet. Scroll of the Moon, Silent Moonfall. Luofei operated the Scroll of the Moon at the same time. The moonlight sprinkled down and there was endless silence. In an instant, birds stopped singing, flowers stopped fragrant, and time seemed to have stopped. "We can't fight anymore. Retreat." The demon god was blocked for a moment. Xia Zi waved his sword and cut open the battle. He took the 3 injured people and quickly left. Luofei condensed her palm and made another move. Then, her beautiful figure flashed and left with the 4 people. The demon god waved his hand to disperse the successive sword and palm attacks. He looked coldly at the disappearing group of people and gradually dispersed. 17 miles away, the battle had reached its final moment. The light of the Yama divine weapon dimmed, indicating that Ning Chen's fire of life was about to be extinguished. The demonic chi swept over and took Ning Chen and Meng Xuanji away. He swung his sword and said, "Luofei, take them and the abbot away." "Yes." Luofei responded and moved to the other side of the battle. She forced Hua Zhuang to retreat and took the abbot away. "Xia Zi, you really betrayed the divine religion." Looking at the white-haired man in front of him, Bian Jiang couldn't hide the killing intent in his eyes. He didn't believe that an outsider would be loyal to the divine religion. Now, it was true. Xia Zi didn't care. The demonic sword moved and his white hair danced. His demonic chi shocked the world. They collided and both were forced back several steps. The emperor didn't linger and retreated, turning into a stream of light that flew away. The battle stopped and peace was restored behind the great array. All that was left was a scene of devastation and blood that dyed the ground red. Chapter 378. In the Jiming Marquis residence, Xia Zi and Luofei returned with the injured people. Everyone was covered in blood, telling of the tragedy of the battle. The power of the extreme sky formation was beyond their expectations. It suppressed everyone's cultivation and made it difficult for them to use their full strength. Although they found a way to break the formation, they were unable to condense the power of faith into a demon god. Meng Xuanji's back was hit by Zhong Qianqiu's palm. Her vitality gradually dissipated. No matter how much Luofei tried to inject her true yuan, it was useless. Ning Chen looked at the unconscious woman with unconcealable sorrow in his eyes. At this moment the exhausted phoenix body could no longer support itself. Drops of phoenix origin and phoenix blood dissipated. With one last look, Hongyi's life faded away and she fell silently. Ning Chen. Xia Zi's pupils shrank. He went forward to support the former. Good friend, his last words were so soft that they couldn't be heard clearly. Only the emperor in front of him heard it clearly. His heart was in pain as if it was being cut by 1,000 knives. In the end, he still couldn't let go of the heavy burden on his shoulders. He left them with the last hope. He never raised his arm again. Jiming. When did he ever know his own fate? In the Qizhou mountain range, in the Taotia's stomach, after the clone's vitality disappeared, the main body was affected. His aura also weakened rapidly. Even the Taoist formation couldn't hold him back. The sound of the Tai Guqin was faintly discernible. Dao Kuei played the strings with both hands and tried his best to protect Su Yi's vitality. However, the souls of the two bodies were connected. The gradual disappearance of one indicated that the life of the other was also coming to an end. In the Marquis residence, the door opened. A white-clothed figure flashed through and took the two people who were dying. In the blink of an eye, she left quickly. Her speed was so fast that the people present didn't have time to react. When they came back to their senses, she had already disappeared. It's Mu Qingxue. Xia Zi was shocked. Where was she taking them? She was worried, so she quickly followed in the direction where the former had disappeared. The two streaks of light, one in front and one behind, widened the distance between them. Mu Qingxue, who had mastered the travel scroll, was so fast that even the emperors in the three disasters couldn't catch up. In the Heavenly Sky Academy, the flowing light stopped. Mu Qingxue appeared and pushed open the door of the wooden house. A trace of indescribable pain flashed through her beautiful eyes as she pleaded, "Teacher, please save them." In the wooden house, the headmaster raised his head and looked at the two people brought by Mu Qingxue. He sighed softly and said slowly, "This girl can be saved, but Ning Chen can't be saved." Xia Zi, who had just rushed over, trembled when he heard the teacher's words. He suppressed his grief and said, "Teacher, please save Miss Meng's life." His good friend had been trapped by love all his life. If he could save Miss Meng, he would be able to rest easy on the road to the Yellow Springs. The headmaster raised his hand and the great righteousness surged and gathered around Meng Xuanji. At the same time, the last bit of phoenix blood flew out from Ning Chen's chest and entered the girl's heart meridian, helping to repair the damage. Not long after, the headmaster stopped and said tiredly, "All right, take her back." "What about him? Is there no other way?" Mu Qingxue asked. Before the headmaster could speak, a purple and white figure appeared out of nowhere in the wooden house. He glanced at the young man in red whose vitality was almost undetectable and said faintly, "His origin is exhausted, and his spirit is injured. Sages can't save him." Then, Luo Xingqian looked at the headmaster and narrowed his eyes. He said, "I didn't notice you when I first came to the Divine Land. Sorry for not recognizing you." The arrival of an unknown powerhouse made Xia Zi's expression turn cold. He said, "May I ask who you are?" "Luo Xingqian, a friend of your Marquis." Luo Xingqian's mouth curved slightly. Although he was smiling, he still gave off a feeling of indifference. Then, Luo Xingqian walked to Ning Chen. A hint of admiration flashed in his eyes. The sword will just now was really wonderful. What a pity. With a complicated look, the purple and white figure dispersed. When he left, he sighed softly in his heart. It was really a pity that he couldn't try such a dazzling sword. "Headmaster, can't we save him?" Just as Luo Xingqian left, Xianyin moved and an illusory figure appeared. He looked at the red-robed man on the ground and asked seriously. Dao Kuei appeared in the academy. After 1,000 years, the two strongest powerhouses of Taoism and Confucianism met for the first time. Without any greetings, they went straight to business. "We can't save him." The headmaster nodded and replied. Jiang Wangji was silent. After a while, he sighed deeply and said, "Then let's do as he said. Sink this soul into the blue frost valley and freeze it forever." Xia Zi's expression changed. He was really angry and shouted, "Are you letting him suffer forever?" 3 souls were separated and 1 was frozen. The other 2 souls couldn't be freed. Once they woke up, they would experience the pain of being frozen. They wouldn't die, but they would live a life worse than death. Jiang Wangji suppressed the pity in his heart. His expression gradually turned cold. He said, "He hasn't finished cultivating the No-2 life scroll. He can't die now. This is his wish. Headmaster, let's do it." Xia Zi was furious. He waved his hand and the demonic sword appeared in his hand. Demonic chi filled the sky. In the bone-chilling lake, Hongyi slowly sank deeper and deeper, becoming more and more blurry. Not long after, she completely disappeared in front of their eyes. On the split ice surface, the lake water once again froze. A cold wind blew and snow covered it, leaving no trace behind. "Miss Mu, thank you." As he spoke, a brilliance gathered and Dao Kuei appeared. He looked at the lake with a slightly gloomy expression. This step was left behind by Ning Chen. Perhaps, he had already predicted his ending a long time ago. When Mu Qianshang saw the figure that appeared, he was shocked. Dao Kuei, Jiang Wangji. The inheritance of the heavenly pavilion of compassion sword was the Taoism of the past. Regarding the leader of the Taoism from 1,000 years ago, the ancient books and stone walls of the heavenly pavilion of compassion sword were left with the thickest ink. Mu Qingxue did not say a word. He turned and left. After 2 steps, he disappeared. Jiang Wangji sighed softly. The Tai Xianyin appeared and the Taoism demon sealing formation fell from the Guqin. It turned into a stream of light and disappeared into the lake. A demonic cultivator came to take Mu Qingxue away. In the Qizhou Mountains, in the stomach of the Taotai, the Tai Chi Yin Yang formation forcefully preserved the vitality of the knowing destiny state. The soul that left the body was frozen and did not dissipate. It gave the body a slight chance of survival. The knowing destiny state was the last path left for himself. Although it was extremely difficult, it was the only path that could be taken. Dao Kuei stood aside and used the Tai Xianyin to activate the life and death scrolls. He was the last hope. The unconscious knowing destiny state had 2 souls still. The life that was forcefully preserved would have to endure the most extreme pain in the world. This was the path that he chose. Once he stepped on it, he would have to bear the pain. In the Weiyang Palace, Xia Zi had been kneeling outside the door for 2 days. No one dared to persuade him. Xia Sinyu and Ning Shi stood outside the room with tears in their eyes. They did not dare to step in. Such a big change in the manner of the knowing destiny state could not be hidden from the Zhongsun in the Weiyang Palace. Most of the time, the Zhongsun did not say anything, but it did not mean that he did not know anything. As the empress of the Xia dynasty, he had seen too much. It was not easy to hide from him. Xia Zi was possessed by the devil. The burden on the knowing destiny state was several times heavier. The Zhongsun saw it all. He did not say anything, but he knew better than anyone. Now that the emperor had returned, the knowing destiny state could not hold on anymore. He sank into the thousand-snow lake and slept forever. The emperor was wrong. He was wrong because he was kind. He was wrong because he was possessed by the devil. He was wrong because he put the burden on his friend. It was too late for him to return. With a creak, the door opened and Qing Ning walked out. When she saw Xia Zi kneeling outside the door, she couldn't hide the pain in her eyes and said, "Please go back. Her Highness won't see you before he returns." Xia Sinyu and Ning Shi's tears fell silently. They knew that the Empress was really heartbroken this time. No one knew if he could come back. However, the Zhongsun would never take back what he said. Unless the knowing destiny state came back, they would never see each other again. Chapter 379. In the study of the Jiming Marquis residence, the place where the Jiming Marquis used to meditate was now empty. He was no longer there. As usual, Ruoshi served him tea. Her tears fell drop by drop, wetting the paper on the table. Daylily, who had been recuperating for many days, walked out of the room and looked at the crying woman in the study with dim eyes. Love was always the most depressing thing. On the western front of Great Xia, the Evernight army had been pushed out of Great Xia's western border under the relentless attacks of the three dynasties. They were advancing westward and were not far from the Eternal Night cult. The effects of the extreme sky array were becoming more and more obvious. The days were shortened and the nights were lengthened. In just a month's time, there were less than 8 hours of daylight left. The world was in a state of panic and people's hearts were constantly changing. With Xia Zi's return, the emperor's heart was no longer as benevolent as before. He took on the burden left behind by Jiming and suppressed all the rebellions with his demonic sword. Rivers of blood flowed in the cities. People's hearts were unpredictable in troubled times. When benevolence could no longer stabilize people's hearts, only the sword in hand was the best solution. The famous sword of the Confucian school, the 3-foot autumn water, placed in the Haowu manor never appeared again. The emperor could no longer return to the past. The emperor's sword, the symbol of benevolence and righteousness, was destined to be covered in dust forever. After the third soul that was suppressed by Yama returned to his body, he forcefully suppressed the 2 demonized souls and maintained his last bit of sanity and lucidity. Xia Zi did not know how long he could hold on, but before he demonized again, he would do his best to complete the task his good friend entrusted to him. According to Ning Chen's judgment, when the day completely disappeared, it would be the day of Yama's descent. Judging from the current rate of increase of night, Evernight would arrive in less than 2 months. In the battle of the extreme sky array, the flaws of the array had been found. However, with the suppression of the array and the obstruction of the demonic gods formed by faith, it would not be easy to successfully break the array. It would take about a month for the 3 dynasties to reach the Eternal Night cult. The Golden Staff Imperial Tutor and the Abbot of the Crossing Temple also needed time to heal. The final battle would be held in a month's time. Whether or not Yama's descent could be stopped would be decided in this battle. Whether the Divine Land would win in the end or the end of the world would soon be revealed. While the Divine Great Land was in chaos, Ishui Han, Yao Man, and the others from West Buddha's homeland had to hide their whereabouts because of the Calamity Fire's injuries. They had to wait for the Calamity Fire to recover before they could discuss the matter of building the 4 Cardinal God Tower. Luo Xingqian didn't care about the 4's decision. He walked alone in the Divine Great Land, looking for opponents he was interested in. Luo Xingqian stopped in front of the skyscraping matrix in the west. After a short pause, he stepped into it. He wanted to see how powerful the matrix that Marquis Jiming and so many cultivators of the Divine Prefecture could not break through was. Not long after the purple and white figure entered, the sound of a sword rang out. The broken sword and the white-robed figure also entered. Desolate City's Sword One, experienced in the mortal world. He could not bear the suffering of the common people and bore his sword to prove his sword heart. Another 7 or 8 minutes later, boundless light descended from the sky, converging and taking form. The four extremes dark heaven entered the formation alone. There were no coincidences in the world. Three powerful cultivators of the present age entered the formation one after another. Their cultivation levels were different, and their goals were different. But at this moment, the world saw hope once again. In the formation of divine light, three figures entered one after the other. They moved quickly to the west. The extremely fast brilliance disappeared in the blink of an eye. The origin of the divine beasts led the spiritual chi of heaven and earth to surge in the sky. The endless power of faith continued to gather from various dynasties in the west, intensifying the power of the formation. The deeper the three went, the more they felt the pressure of the formation. It was as heavy as a mountain, and it was constantly increasing. What a strange formation! Luo Xingqian's eyes flashed with surprise. No wonder Marquis Jiming and the others failed. Such a formation was indeed a nightmare for warriors. At this moment, evil energy descended from the sky. Figures of hell Azuras appeared one after another, blocking the path ahead. Child's play. Luo Xingqian snorted. He turned his palm and condensed vital qi. Vigorous genuine qi surged out and the three figures of demons collapsed instantly. The evil qi dispersed and disappeared. However, just as Luo Xingqian continued to move forward, thunderbolts fell from the sky. Divine soldiers and heavenly generals punished lives with halberds. Hundreds of thunderbolts and thousands of divine soldiers appeared. More and more heavenly palace soldiers appeared with halberds in their hands, surrounding the intruders. Luo Xingqian frowned slightly. He waved his hand and the star mark appeared. He drew the bow and arrow. Majestic chi gathered and formed a vortex. With one arrow, hundreds of heavenly palace soldiers collapsed and disappeared without a trace. Clang! The sound of metal and stone colliding was heard. The halberd was waved but was blocked by the tip of the finger. Immediately, the finger condensed into a sharp point and broke out. The divine general dissipated. The divine soldiers descended from the sky and the halberds were at the same time. Luo Xingqian condensed his finger and shook the divine blade. Although he was not at a disadvantage, it was difficult for him to escape in a short period of time. At the same time, Xian Tian and Jian Yi who entered the formation also encountered great trouble. The flame divine general appeared and the evil god from another world appeared, completely blocking the path ahead. Two swords appeared and shone brightly. The divine general collapsed and the evil god scattered. However, in the blink of an eye, the fire gathered together and the evil chi condensed again. Sword style, sky-toppling sword. When the sword style was executed, the formation trembled. It was a sword style that surpassed the blue. However, it was different from the blue sword style. The sky-toppling sword destroyed the fire instantly and could no longer gather together. The sword moved forward. Just at this moment, the horizon changed again. The Yin Chi scattered and the Yin soldiers took the path. A magnificent army with thousands of men and horses stepped forward. After breaking through the endless obstruction, the three of them finally felt that something was wrong. They knew that they might have fallen into an illusion. They calmed their hearts and concentrated to find a way to deal with it. This is really endless. The clear sword led the way and cut down four evil gods. Before they even had the time to take a breather, the halberd came again. Xian Tian waved his sword and shook off the cold sword in front of his eyes. He used the momentum to retreat and leaped into the sky. The clear sword's radiance rose endlessly. The ultimate move appeared for the first time. Void extinction. When the ultimate move appeared, thousands of swords fell from the sky like rain. They flowed endlessly. In an instant, the area within 1,000 feet was devastated. The shadows of the evil gods dissipated completely. A sword light pierced out and the illusion shook. The three of them simultaneously pushed their sword arts to the limit. They condensed their essence into a single point and used their strength to break through the illusion. With a bang, the illusion dissipated. After leaving the illusion, the three of them finally became serious. This was just an illusion, but it had consumed so much of their essence. It could be imagined that the dangers ahead would be even more difficult to deal with. As the three of them broke through the illusion, Bai Jiang opened his eyes in the center of the formation. A cold light flashed in his eyes and the black aura dissipated. He instantly vanished. He hadn't thought that someone would try to break through the formation so quickly. Moreover, they had come separately. However, if someone came to throw away their lives, he naturally welcomed them. At the same time, within the Blackwater Army's camp, Xia Zi, who had temporarily replaced Marquis' victorious return, received a report. His expression changed. "What is it?" asked Luo Fei. "Someone is trying to break through the formation," said Xia Zi gravely. Luo Fei frowned. This was troublesome. Only they knew of the formation's flaws. If they rashly rushed in, they would only put themselves in danger. "Should we save them?" asked Luo Fei softly. "No." Xia Zi calmed down and shook his head. Right now, peak experts were extremely precious. Before the final battle, they absolutely couldn't allow any more accidents to happen. "I hope they can find a way to break the formation themselves." Luo Fei sighed. Xia Zi's eyes flickered. He hoped that this was the case, but it was almost impossible. There weren't many top experts in the world, but smart people like Fan Lingyue and Ning Chen were even rarer. Up until now, including him, these people who had entered the Ultimate Heaven formation together still didn't understand how Ning Chen could see the flaws in the formation. Some of the things that Ning Chen knew were sometimes inconceivable and hard to understand. At this moment, a red light flashed in the tent and a red-haired figure walked out. Looking at the white-haired sovereign, he narrowed his eyes and said, "It's you." Seeing that the person in the tent wasn't the knowledge Marquis, Luan Fengchen's heart sank. A bad premonition arose. Only Ning Chen knew how to contact him. Now that he hadn't appeared, there was no doubt that something had happened. Xia Zi gave a simple explanation of what had happened recently. Time was of the essence, and he urgently needed the support of the four extremities. After hearing this, Luan Fengchen deeply sighed. Suppressing the sadness in his heart, he nodded. "Did Ronglu suspect anything?" Xia Zi asked with a solemn look in his eyes. "He's never truly trusted anyone, so it doesn't matter if he's suspicious or not. The most important thing is that I'm still useful to him, so he won't easily fall out with me," said Luan Fengchen. "Be careful. After all, he's an expert who can enter the third calamity at any time. Once he makes trouble for you, he won't be easy to deal with," warned Xia Zi. "Yes, I'll be careful." Last time, Ning Chen forced him to use a forbidden technique, and his body was heavily injured. Although his injuries and cultivation base have recovered, his strength is clearly not at its peak, said Luan Fengchen. Xia Zi nodded. 1 month from now, King Haowu's estate will be waiting for the four extremities. Definitely, said Luan Fengchen. With that, his red robes scattered and disappeared. After Luan Fengchen left, Xia Zi walked out of the commander's tent. He looked toward the distant north, an unprecedented firmness in his eyes. His good friend had already done everything he could. The rest would be up to him. Within the tent, Luo Fei sighed. The friendship between men was truly not something a woman could understand. Xia Zi wasn't a bloodthirsty person. Now that he had regained his reason, he had put away all his benevolence and forced himself to become emotionless. As for that cold-blooded Jiming Marquis, he had spared no expense to leave behind enough power for his good friend, preserving their final hope. In this chaotic world, the human heart was the most difficult thing to trust. The kings and marquises of the Grand Xia were able to trust each other so unreservedly, entrusting their lives and hopes to each other. Even in death, they hadn't wavered in the slightest. Unfortunately, they had still returned a bit too late. Their meeting in the extreme celestial formation had become an irreparable regret. Only now did she understand why the divine religion, at its peak, had been unable to defeat the Grand Xia, which had been riddled with holes by the northern Meng's iron hooves. The Grand Xia's Weiyang Palace's Empress Chongsun was truly the most admirable woman in the world. She had single-handedly raised the kings and marquises of the Grand Xia. Chapter 380. The ultimate sky formation trapped the three geniuses. Seeing that the day was about to end and the night was about to arrive, the pressure in the formation was getting heavier. The moment the sword was drawn, it was as if it was tied down by 1,000 pounds. Outside the formation, Xia Zi walked over and stopped 10 miles away. He calmly observed the formation that was getting stronger and stronger. He had no intention of saving them. Time passed slowly. In the formation, Luo Xingchen moved forward quickly. At this moment, the sky was filled with black gas. A black-clothed figure appeared. Without saying a word, he struck out a powerful palm. The powerful power of the King of Hell surged, causing the world to tremble. Luo Xingchen's eyes narrowed. He turned his palm to meet the attack. With a bang, he took 3 steps back. The blood in his body rolled violently. His body was limited. It was difficult for him to gain the upper hand even if he defeated the legendary West Buddha genius of the Divine Land Sword. Star Mark. With a clench of his hand, the stars appeared. The heavenly bow was drawn. A sharp aura gathered. An arrow was shot out. A flowing light flashed and broke toward Wu Guan's heart. Too slow. Bai Jiang snorted. He held his sword and condensed energy. The sword radiance shook the tip of the arrow. With a clang, the arrow radiance scattered and disappeared. The battle was close at hand. The sword radiance pressed forward again, suppressing the timing of Star Mark's bow. The brilliant emerald blood radiance flashed across one death after another. Luo Xingchen frowned. The tip of his finger shook the sword radiance. The clang of the collision kept ringing between the two. You're not from the Divine Land, yet you can't wait to die. Stupid. Bai Jiang recognized the bow in Bai Jiang's hand. His eyes flashed with sarcasm. Another bow from the Zhao family. It seemed that when the master arrived, the Zhao family of Zhongzhou must be completely cleaned up. I thought I was hated enough. I didn't expect to meet my match today. Luo Xingchen sneered. He changed the direction of the attack with 2 fingers on his right hand. He shook off the sword radiance and used the momentum to retreat 10 feet. The arrow box behind him opened. 3 green arrows flew out. The intertwined arrow radiance became faster and faster. Its power was completely different from before. The sound of it breaking through the air was piercing. Bai Jiang's expression turned serious. The bloody sky tears of blood rose. The sword split the wind and clouds as it met the arrows. With 3 violent vibrations, the green arrows shattered. Then, 3 golden arrows shot out and pierced through the body. Seeing blood, Bai Jiang retreated a few steps. Blood dripped from the corner of his mouth. He did not expect to be hit by an arrow. He suffered a big loss. How about it? We don't know who's going to die, said Luo Xingchen indifferently. Bai Jiang wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth, and his eyes turned cold. The Nether King's aura around him sublimated to the extreme. His feet moved, and in an instant, he rushed forward again. Luo Xingchen moved at the same time. His figure was illusory, and the afterimages were like dancing stars. Rays of arrow radiance flew down from the afterimages and trapped Wu Guan's body. Is it that simple? Bai Jiang's sword aura changed direction, and thousands of revolving swords met the descending arrow. Amidst the rumbling, endless aftershocks rippled out, and the arrow dissipated. Divine destruction. Wu Guan held his sword horizontally, and the Nether King's move appeared once more. Endless black chi surged around him, and a berserk pressure soared into the sky. Rings of divine might rippled out, illuminating the rising moon in the sky. The blood-red light shone brilliantly, and the formation resonated. The 3 origin source light pillars boosted the might of this move to its peak. The terrifying might suppressed the world. Even from 1,000 miles away, one could feel this extreme aura of destruction. Within the formation, Xiantian and Qianyi both sensed the destructive aura coming from the distance. Their expressions changed, and they immediately realized that other than them, there was someone else charging into the formation. The two of them didn't hesitate at all. They took a step forward and soared into the air. Sword light flourished, and from thousands of miles away, they rushed toward the distant battlefield. The extremely resplendent sword light pierced through the barrier and rushed over from two different directions. Seeing this, Luo Xingchen leaped into the sky. Borrowing the power of the two swords, he drew his bow and nocked an arrow. A crimson arrow light appeared. It was extremely ferocious, and it surged out. Two swords and an arrow intertwined and turned into a blazing red light that collided with the Nether King's move. With a loud bang, everything collapsed. The terrifying aftershock spread out for dozens of miles. Luo Xingchen and Bai Jiang, who bore the brunt of the impact, flew out with blood all over their bodies. They were both severely injured. On the other side, Qianyi and Xiantian were also affected by the aftershocks. Their qi and blood were in turmoil. Although they weren't severely injured, they still felt uncomfortable. Wu Guan was caught off guard when the three of them worked together to fight to a draw. At this moment, the three of them realized that it was much more difficult to defeat the person in front of them in this formation than they had imagined. Outside the formation, night fell. The moon in the sky became brighter, and a scarlet light illuminated the world. The Nether King's power reflected through the moonlight and descended upon the divine continent. The extreme heavens might increased rapidly, and a faint layer of blood color lingered on the formation. Even the sovereigns outside the formation could feel the powerful oppression. Demonic sword. Xia Zi waved his hand. His sword moved, and his body moved. He leaped into the sky, and a demonic aura rose around him. The light on his sword shone brightly, covering the scarlet moon in the sky. Reincarnation. The reincarnation sword slashed toward the formation below. The surging demonic aura in the dark night separated heaven and earth, pointing the way for those who were lost. With a loud bang, the formation shook. Within the formation, the three of them sensed it at the same time. They no longer hesitated and quickly retreated. Bai Zhang's eyes darkened when he saw this. He condensed vast origin energy in his palm and sent out a powerful palm strike. Luo Xingchen flipped his palm to block the attack. The corner of his mouth was dyed red again, but he didn't stop and quickly retreated. Outside the formation, Xia Zi slowly descended and quietly looked at the formation. His expression was calm, and there wasn't a trace of fluctuation. He had already led the way. As for whether the people in the formation could escape or not, it would depend on their luck. After a quarter of an hour, three figures rushed out one by one. Their clothes were dyed red, and they were in a sorry state. The three of them looked at each other, then shifted their gazes to the white-haired young man in front of them. "Thank you. Did you meet the demonic god?" Xia Zi asked. Luo Xingchen frowned. What demonic god? He had seen many celestial soldiers and generals, but he hadn't seen a demonic god. Qianyi and Xiantian were also puzzled. They also didn't understand what the demonic god was talking about. Seeing their expressions, Xia Zi sighed inwardly. It turned out that it wasn't the power of the demonic god. In the end, they weren't able to reach the end. "Do you know something?" asked Luo Xingchen. "This isn't the place to talk. Come with me." Xia Zi collected his thoughts and responded. Then, he turned around and walked toward the camp of the Blackwater Army. The three of them had failed to break through the formation, so they also wanted to know what was going on. Thus, they followed. In the Blackwater Army's main tent, Xia Zi explained what they knew about the extreme sky formation to the three of them. Right now, it didn't matter which dynasty or region it was. As long as they could stop the Nether King from descending, they had to fight for any power. The three of them frowned when they heard this. They hadn't expected that after spending so much effort, they would only be able to wander around the formation. They were still far from the center of the formation. How did the Jiming Marquis calculate the location? Asked Luo Xingchen. I'm not sure. When the Jiming Marquis was mentioned again, Xia Zi's eyes flashed with undetectable pain. He didn't even have time to say anything before he couldn't hold on. I still underestimated him. Luo Xingchen narrowed his eyes. This Jiming Marquis was giving him more and more surprises. It was a pity that heroes were short-lived. 1 month later, we will try to break the formation again. At that time, I wonder if the three of you can help us, said Xia Zi as he suppressed the pain in his heart. Why is it 1 month later and not now? Asked Shen. In the previous battle, the Golden Staff Imperial Tutor and the others were too heavily injured. It will take a long time for them to recover. Xia Zi's tone changed and he said gravely, on the other hand, which is also the most important point, the power of faith in the Great Sky Formation is too strong. If we want to break the formation, we must first shake the foundation of the divine religion. According to the current situation, it will take about a month before the Allied army completely defeats the Eternal Night divine religion. Once the divine religion is defeated, its position in the hearts of the people of the Western dynasties will be greatly affected. The power of faith they gather will also be greatly reduced. After weighing the pros and cons, 1 month later will be the best time. Ha! Luo Xingchen smiled faintly. He liked the idea of taking drastic measures. Today's battle had been really frustrating. He was a person who held grudges the most. If he didn't take revenge, he wouldn't be a gentleman, even though he wasn't a gentleman himself. 1 month later, I will go to the imperial city of the Great Xia to find you. I hope you can finish the matter as soon as possible. Don't make me wait too long, said Luo Xingchen with a dangerous glint in his eyes. Definitely, said Xia Zi seriously. After getting the promise, Luo Xingchen didn't stay any longer. He waved his hand casually and left. 1 month later, I will be there on time. Jian stood up and left after saying that. After the two left, Xian Tian looked at the person in front of him and asked seriously, is the Jiming Marquis really dead? Xia Zi didn't answer directly. He sighed softly and asked, from your point of view, isn't Ning Chen's death a good news? Maybe it was in the past. Xian Tian changed the topic and said in a deep voice, however, the current situation may be completely different with or without the Jiming Marquis. He was the one who saw the flaw in the Great Sky Formation. We don't know the formation as well as he does. If something unexpected happens and he isn't here, we will be in trouble. Xia Zi was silent for a moment. After a while, he slowly said, whether you believe it or not, he really can't come. This time, we can only deal with these possible accidents by ourselves. Xian Tian squinted his eyes and stared at the former for a long time. He then stood up and said, 1 month later, I will be there on time. After saying that, Xian Tian also turned and left. In the empty commander's tent, only Xia Zi was left. He looked at the flickering lights and pondered. With the addition of these 3 people, the battle strength they had gathered was at its peak. Facing the Nether King, no accidents could happen. This was their last hope. Whether they could bring peace back to the divine Great Land depended on the result of this final battle. Chapter 381. The flames of war were merciless, destroying the divine land that was already riddled with holes. The allied army of the 3 dynasties advanced westward at all costs. They were determined to defeat the Eternal Night sect in the shortest time possible. The battlefield became a harvester of human lives. Tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands, and even millions of soldiers and civilians died in the war. The divine land was in a state of war that had never been seen before. Both sides seemed to have gone mad. They kept pouring in new forces to fight for the final victory. Death and fear spread endlessly, becoming a dark cloud that shrouded the entire divine land. The Great Xia, the Northern Meng, and the Barbarian Dynasty, the 3 most powerful dynasties in the divine land, attacked the divine land at all costs. the Eternal Night sect finally showed signs of weakness. This colossus that had existed for countless years had a terrifying foundation. After the Marquis of Jiming had used up a large number of their top experts, they still managed to hold on under the fierce attacks of the three dynasties. In the imperial city of the Great Xia, many experts gathered. The people who were in seclusion to heal also came out. If they succeeded in this final battle, it would be a blessing for the divine land. If they failed, it would be a nightmare for the world. There were less than 4 hours left in the daytime. The blood moon in the sky was frighteningly bright. The terrifying power of the god of hell could be clearly felt even outside the skyscraping formation. Everyone began to realize that the time of the god of hell's descent was close. In the Haowu Palace, a report of victory came, symbolizing that the war had finally come to an end. The news quickly spread throughout the divine land like water. Everyone was shocked, and sad. But no matter what, the war that had been going on for several years was finally over. It's our turn. In the Haowu Palace, Xia Zi stood up and looked at the figures in the hall. After this battle, no one knew how many people could come back. As long as they could stop the god of hell's descent, it would be worth it even if they couldn't come back. We've finally come to this point. The hierarch of the Eternal Night looked at the west. For this battle, many people had been sacrificed. They could not afford to lose. They could only succeed, not fail. I'm getting impatient, Luo Xingchen said with a faint smile. Saint Xian Tian looked at the young man in front of him and sighed. There's no need to say any more. Luan Fengchen raised his hand to stop Luan Fengchen from continuing. What happened in the past was no longer important. Maybe after today, they would never be able to come back. Everything that happened in the past could only be discussed in the underworld. Originally, I didn't want to come. Unfortunately, I couldn't endure the torture of my good friend. I wonder if it's too late to regret it now. Jianghua laughed. Ha! Luan Fengchen lightly smiled and said, it's really lonely to walk alone on the road to the Yellow Springs. I have friends to accompany me, and I have someone to talk to. That's true, said Jianghua with a fake smile. Amitba, it's time. Everyone, let's set off, the abbot of Du Yi Temple interrupted. Yes. Everyone stood up. All of them had different faces. Perhaps they didn't know each other in the past, but now, they were all comrades in arms with a common goal. They were no longer separated by territories, realms, or even positions. In the next moment, streaks of light shot out of the Haowu mansion like shooting stars. They were so bright that the entire imperial city could see them clearly. Chang's son walked out of the Weiyang Palace with tears in his eyes. He had to come back alive. In the west of the Grand Xia, streaks of light gathered outside the extreme sky Grand Formation. One figure after another walked out. The top experts of the world had gathered to break through the formation. This battle would decide the fate of the entire Divine Prefecture, and even the entire 5 regions. The Eternal Night Hierarch, Xia Zi, Luo Xingchen, Marquis Victorious Return, Luo Fei, Jian Yi, the Abbot of Du Yi Temple, Jian Bodhi, the Golden Staff Imperial Tutor, Luan Fengchen, Jianghua, Princess Shihua, Duke Qinghua of the Sudden Thunder Dynasty. A dozen top experts connected their auras to resist the might of the Extreme Sky Grand Formation. The Eternal Night Hierarch and the others who had broken through the Extreme Sky Grand Formation before walked at the front, following the path that knowing destiny had calculated. They didn't have much time. They only had less than 4 hours. Once night fell and the blood moon rose, the power of the Grand Formation would multiply, and their chances of success would be minuscule. 15 minutes after they entered the formation, lightning fell from the sky, and the heavenly palace appeared. Thousands of divine generals descended to the mortal world, and illusions appeared again to hinder their progress. Let me do it. Save your true origin and maintain your best condition. Princess Shihua walked out and waved her delicate hand. The joyous Union Bell appeared. The joyous Union Bell, which was ranked alongside the Golden Feather Centipede, displayed its might for the first time. The sound of the bell swayed, and multicolored light shone. Illusions appeared within illusions, and its power broke through the illusions. The space distorted, and the two illusions fought. Princess Shihua condensed her true origin and poured it into the joyous union bell. With a bang, the illusions were broken, and the surroundings quickly returned to normal. After breaking through the illusions, Princess Shihua looked exhausted. It was obvious that she had used up a lot of her strength. After the illusions were broken, the group didn't delay. They immediately moved and continued forward. You really came. I have been waiting for you for a long time. At this moment, the black gas that filled the sky condensed, and a black-clothed figure walked out. He looked at the group in front of him and sneered. A month had passed, and Bai Zhang's aura had become even stronger. It was far stronger than when Ning Chen and the others entered the formation. With the support of the Underworld King's power, Bai Zhang's martial crown had transformed once again, surpassing everyone present. Ha, what a coincidence! I am also here to look for you. Luo Xingqian walked out and clenched his fist. Star Mark appeared, and the battle started again. Count me in. Xian Tian walked forward and calmly said. Jian Yi also walked out and said, we will delay him. You all go and break the formation. Be careful. Xia Zi warned. Without hesitation, he led the group forward. The three of you are really confident. Bai Jiang didn't chase after them. It's enough to deal with you. After saying that, clear sword unsheathed, and an extremely fast sword instantly arrived in front of Bai Jiang. Sharp killing intent threatened to take his life. What I mean is that you want to stop my king's descent with just those people? You are dreaming. Bai Jiang sneered and blocked with his sword. A jade-colored light surrounded his sword as it collided with clear sword's brilliance. To tell you the truth, you are even more annoying than me. Luo Xingqian pointed his finger and took a step forward, once again surrounding Bai Jiang. Bai Jiang didn't feel the slightest fear in the face of their pincer attack. He held his sword and his aura surged. He wasn't at a disadvantage at all. When Jian Yi saw this, he unsheathed his broken sword. An ancient wave streaked across the sky, and his sword slashed down. Pointless struggle. Bai Jiang pushed away the two people in front of him with a palm. Then, he slashed with his jade-colored blood, and the heaven-slashing sword shattered. Jian Yi fell to the ground and retreated 3 steps. Blood quietly dripped from the corner of his mouth. 3 against 1, but they still couldn't gain the upper hand. Wu Guan's ability to use the power of the Underworld King was truly shocking. Seeing that the situation was unfavorable, the three's encirclement instantly changed. Luo Xingqian took a step forward and broke away from the battle. Then, he drew his bow, and thousands of sharp lights rained down. Bai Zhang's pupils constricted, and thousands of spinning swords shot out. The swords rumbled and shook 100-li void extinction. The profound sky sword flow was majestic. It was powerful and deadly. Bai Jiang turned his palm to face the sword flow. At this moment, the broken sword's sharpness reappeared, and a sharp sword chi came pressing down. Wind and clouds appeared on the sword again. Wu Guan's eyes turned cold, and his jade-colored blood met the attack again. Although he couldn't store enough energy, he still forcibly blocked the broken sword. Ah! However, when his palm and sword blocked the attack, a silent arrow instantly appeared in front of him. Bai Jiang couldn't dodge it in time. He groaned and blood stained the sand. Since the start of the battle, Wu Guan was injured for the first time. His anger surged, and the aura of the Underworld King surged into his body. With a bang, he sent the 2 people in front of him flying. Xiantian and Jian Yi fell to the ground and vomited blood. They looked at Wu Guan in front of them with heavy hearts. They understood that this battle was going to be fought to the death. Just as the 3 were fighting bitterly, Xia Zi and the others encountered some trouble again. The formation changed, and a sea of lightning trapped them. It was quite different from when they first entered. Endless lightning fell as if there was no end. Seeing that time was running out, the abbot of Du Temple and the sword Bodhi walked out. They used their Buddha bodies to open a path and buy time for everyone. Everyone, I wish you success. The dual Buddha body circulated to the extreme, and the revered Buddha body appeared. Dazzling golden light pierced through heaven and earth, cutting through the lightning and supporting a calm path. Many thanks. Xia Zi and the others said their thanks and continued to pass through the sea of lightning. Dangers and difficulties tested everyone's determination to move forward. The changing formation brought one crisis after another. Without the knowing destiny state, everyone could only use their strength to open a path and fight for a chance to move forward. At the same time, in the stomach of the Tao Tai in Mount Chizhou, the cultivation of the No-2 life scroll had reached the final stage. Dao Kuei opened the formation and used his knowing destiny state body to forcefully circulate the vital qi of the two scrolls. However, he was still unable to complete the last stage. The foundation required for the two scrolls, which were the most difficult to cultivate, surpassed all the other arcane tomes. Although the knowing destiny state had only been cultivating for a short time, it was still far from the foundation required for the two scrolls. Headmaster, I need your help, Dao Kuei said slowly. In the academy, the headmaster looked towards the north. His body slowly faded away. Not long after, an illusory figure appeared in the Taotia's stomach. Although it was not solid, it still made people feel an unusually strong sense of righteousness pressing down on them. What's the matter? The headmaster asked. The last step of the No-2 life scroll. He can't take it because his foundation is not strong enough, Jiang Wangji said seriously. The headmaster's old face turned serious. It was too late to change someone else to cultivate the scroll. At this moment, they could only forcefully improve the foundation of the boy. However, it was not easy to improve the foundation, especially now that time was tight and there was no time to find other ways. Now, the only way was to borrow time from the heavens with the origin of life and forcefully improve the foundation of the boy. Wake him up. This is a decision he should make himself, the headmaster said with a deep sigh. Jiang Wangji was silent. He had planned to wake him up after helping him cultivate the No-2 life scroll. He did not expect that he would have to wake him up in the end. For the sake of the world, they owed him so much that they could never repay him in this lifetime. The Tai zither appeared, and the sound reverberated. It reached the spiritual soul and awakened the sleeping knowing destiny state. With a painful groan, the knowing destiny state, who had not fully woken up, began to tremble. Even the strong knowing destiny state could not help but groan in pain. Chapter 382. Knowing destiny opened his eyes in a daze. A moment later, his divine sense came back like a tide, followed by the pain of his soul being torn apart. It made him feel that passing out was a relief. Hang in there. Jiang Wangji's eyes were heavy. He turned over his palm and condensed vital energy into knowing destiny's body to reduce the pain. However, the pain from the depths of the soul was not so easy to reduce. Although Dao Kuei tried his best, the effect was minimal. Blood kept flowing out of her trembling white robe, which showed how hard it was for the knowing destiny state. She bore the burden for the sake of persevering in her heart without complaint or regret. Ning Chen, your foundation is not enough. You need to consume your life to make up for it. Are you willing? The headmaster asked seriously. The difficult words came into their ears word by word. Dao Kuei sighed deeply and played the Tai Guqin. The 7 strings sounded together and the Taoist formation was opened again. The yin and yang swords flew out and the restrictive spell appeared. Knowing destiny's vitality was quickly stripped away. He groaned in pain and his black hair danced in the wind. 300 years in the Khanate realm and 500 years in the 3 calamities. Knowing destiny was infinitely close to the 3 calamities and his life was much longer than ordinary Khanate realm cultivators. Now that he was stripped away, 500 years disappeared in a flash. The headmaster raised his hand and the great righteousness surged. He activated the 500 years that knowing destiny borrowed from heaven and turned it into a 100-year foundation. He injected it back into knowing destiny's body. 500 years in exchange for 100 years. It was never fair to make a deal with heaven. However, this was the only way now. Time left no trace and he aged overnight. Knowing destiny's face changed slightly, his long hair was covered with frost. Strands of black hair turned white. The intertwining of black and white was very dazzling. Dao Kuei, I'll leave the rest to you. After the headmaster gave his last instruction, the virtual shadow dispersed and disappeared in a flash. Jiang Wangji looked at the trembling young man in front of him and felt sorry for him. Wasn't it too cruel for them to put such a heavy burden on him? From now on, in the few days left, the burden and pain this young man had to bear would surpass all of them. The Yin and Yang formation was activated with the help of the Yin-Yang ancient sword. The Taoist formation helped the knowing destiny state to break through the last hurdle of the two scrolls of life and death. With the foundation of 100 years, the breath of life and death continued to converge, turning into the cycle of samsara between life and death. The heavenly Tao was flawed, and the human Tao was regretful. The perfect cultivation technique had deviated from the great Tao. Above the 9 heavens, thunder rumbled, and divine punishment reappeared, punishing and cleansing the sinners. With the help of the zither, Dao Kuei played the 7 strings to open the sky. The sound of Tai spread out and covered the breath of the knowing destiny state, avoiding the fury of the heavenly axiom. While knowing destiny was trying his best to complete the 2 scrolls, Xia Zi and the others finally arrived at the center of the ultimate sky formation after passing through numerous obstacles. The swirling spatial vortex was right in front of his eyes. At this moment, in the sky above the formation, black feathers fluttered. Faith gathered and an illusory figure appeared. His face couldn't be seen clearly. Only a terrifyingly powerful aura circulated, shaking heaven and earth. The appearance of the demonic god appeared and blocked the path ahead, becoming the last and biggest obstacle for the group. Be careful. We might have to fight with our lives on the line, the Eternal Night Hierarch warned. Ha, now that's interesting. Duke Qinghua walked out and white lightning condensed. Glancing at the 2 people beside him, she said, Luan Fengchen, Jianghua, stop playing dead. Qinghua, your mouth is really unforgiving. Jianghua walked forward and waved his hand. Qingyu appeared, a long and narrow blade with dazzling moonlight. Luan Fengchen also walked forward. The flowing light blood blade, which had been reforged by the 2 masters of heaven and earth, flew out. The 3 geniuses of the 4 extreme realms walked out at the same time. The 3 blades disappeared in an instant, forcing the demonic god to take his life. The swift blades that flew out with the wind turned into streaks of flowing light. In an instant, there were too many for the eyes to take in. They had already exchanged dozens of moves at extreme speed. Red maples fluttered, and blades were hidden in the maples. The demonic god raised his hand, and his divine power went wild. The red maples collapsed, and the blade light changed direction instantly. It didn't clash head-on, but turned back and pressed forward again. The 3 blades were also light and swift, each faster than the last. The 3 geniuses moved with their blades, and the people moved with their blades. The younger generation has already grown to this level, the Golden Staff Imperial Advisor's eyes flashed. They're about to surpass us. Empress Shihua took a step forward, and the joyful union bell in her hand soared into the sky. Its ringing echoed through the grand formation, and a boundless illusion descended from the sky. Heaven and earth changed, and the wind assisted them. The 3 of them moved even faster. 1 blade flashed past, followed by another. Their swift blades were bewildering. Devil's sword, bury the heavens. The demonic god was lifted away, and its divine power rose once more. Wild waves spread out, suppressing the sharp blades. When Xia Zi saw this, he used his devil sword to meet the attack. Luofei followed closely behind. Her hands glowed, and moonlight illuminated the world. The might of the heavenly book appeared, protecting the emperor. The Eternal Night Religion Master also joined the formation. Scarlet lightning surged from his smoke cloud divine spear, blocking the demonic god's might. The three of them attacked together, and the ringing of bells resounded through the grand formation. With a bang, the shockwaves caused the three of them to retreat several steps, barely managing to block the demonic god's attack. Marquis' triumphant return also moved. He raised his military blade, and the sound of battle rang out. A vast military might slashed down. Law of life, one law of heaven and earth. The Golden Staff State Preceptor also used his technique to help. The golden staff shone brightly, illuminating the universe. The two techniques combined and slashed at the demonic god. Black feathers drifted, and a cold glint flashed across the demonic god's eyes. The power of faith around him erupted, and converged in front of him, forming a protective barrier that blocked the might of the two techniques. After the technique landed, the blade's edge shivered again, and the killing light was as swift as flowing water. The three prides used their blades without any gaps, advancing one after another. They continuously rotated and restrained the demonic god's might with all their might. The Eternal Night Religion Master, Luofei, and Xia Zi blocked the attacks and protected the three prides. Empress Shihua urged the Joyful Union Bell to help, while Marquis' triumphant return and the Golden Staff State Preceptor counterattacked. They attacked and defended with tacit understanding, and there were no openings. The battle was in a stalemate. The demonic god's might was unparalleled. The nine of them worked together, and even with the suppression of the Grand Formation, they still managed to block the demonic god's shocking might. Time passed slowly, and the sun was about to set. There was less and less time left for everyone, and the attacks of the nine became fiercer. This was the last chance. No one dared to be careless, and no one dared to give up. If they failed, it would be the end of the divine prefecture. Seeing that the time was almost up, the Eternal Night Religion Master raised his vital essence to the peak and switched from defense to offense. He took a step forward, and tens of thousands of lightning bolts shot out. The Divine Prefecture's #1 powerhouse finally showed his invincible demeanor. Crimson lightning surged, and the divine spear was raised to the sky. The area within a radius of 1,000 feet turned into a world of blood and lightning. The true power of the third calamity rose to its peak. Once the three calamities reached perfection, it would be the pinnacle of the human world. The Eternal Night Religion Master channeled his cultivation and activated the #1 divine weapon of Eternal Night. The divine spear split the heavens and earth, gathering the fury of thunder. At this moment, the wind and clouds changed. Amidst the ear-piercing screeches, the faint sound of the dragon gate descending could be heard. It disappeared in a flash, and in an extremely short moment, a perfect vision appeared. The ultimate technique slashed down, and the grand formation shook. The heavens and earth wailed, and the aurora of blood and lightning illuminated the 9 heavens. The demonic god used his technique to push Xia Zi and Luofei away. He increased the power of his palm, and endless power of faith gathered, trying to withstand the aurora's might. At this time, the 3 sabers turned back in the air. With extreme speed, they drew a dazzling killing light. The demonic god's eyes widened, and he flipped his left hand to block the divine weapon. In that instant, the power of faith gathered wasn't enough, and his attack was already weak. The aurora of blood and lightning descended, and with a loud bang, the horizon exploded. Giant waves wildly surged outwards. The aftermath swept out, and the Eternal Night Religion Master's mouth turned red. He was forced back several steps, and the divine spear was brandished once more. With a bang, the aftermath scattered in all directions. The demonic god appeared, and his body flickered. With a wave of his hand, he scattered the light from the spear, and his illusory body became even more blurry. Dawn appeared, and Marquis' triumphant return strode forwards. His saber slashed out, and his body moved. With a vast military might, he cut apart the illusory world. His brilliance illuminated the world. Demonic sword, bury the heavens. Emperor and demonic, it was hard to tell apart. Demonic energy surged, and demonic seals flourished. A sword, bury the heavens. Combining the two moves, Marquis Luofei quickly rushed forward. The moment it was about to reach the demonic god, Luofei circulated her true essence and condensed the power of the heavenly book. The moon scroll appeared once more, and the world became solemn. In an indiscernible instant, the incoming move passed through the demonic god's body. The demonic god's body shook, and his black feathers surged. Just as he dissipated, he forcefully counterattacked. The horrifying palm power whistled through the air, and the three people who had just attacked couldn't recover in time. They were surrounded by danger. At this moment of crisis, the Golden Staff Imperial Teacher and Empress Cherishing Flower gathered their true essence to resist the demonic god's might. The Acacia Union shattered, and the Golden Staff broke. The two, who had withstood the demonic god's might, were sent flying, and vomited blood. Golden Staff. The Eternal Night Religion Master's body moved, and he caught the two with a worried expression. "I'm fine." Quickly break the formation. The Golden Staff Imperial Teacher vomited another mouthful of blood and said weakly, "Yes." Knowing that there wasn't much time left, the Eternal Night Religion Master's eyes narrowed. He stepped forward and gathered his true essence, supported by the divine weapon, and blood and lightning surged. Xia Zi and Luofei's figures flickered, and they arrived behind the Eternal Night Religion Master. They gathered true essence and poured it into the demonic god's might. Extreme lightning, sacrifice to the heavens. The blood and lightning fell, and the space collapsed. The whirlpool and the space shattered, and the extreme sky grand array continued to collapse. The brilliance of the three divine beasts' origin light pillars that pierced through the sky quickly dimmed. Antares guarded the heart, and the eternal night gave instructions for 100 years. It was supposed to be 100 years of despair, but today, with the joint efforts of the divine prefecture and the four extremities, they finally succeeded and successfully stopped the apocalypse. We finally succeeded. Looking at the extreme sky grand array that was gradually collapsing, the Eternal Night Religion Master, Xia Zi, and the others sighed. "Wrong. You failed." At this moment, a noble yet cold voice sounded. The moment the sun and the moon alternated, the blood moon shone brightly, and the whirlpool that should have collapsed suddenly appeared in the sky. The next moment, a terrifying aura that made people despair pressed down. Black feathers fluttered in the sky, and the world trembled. A black figure slowly descended. His black hair danced in the wind, and his handsome face looked cold. His eyes were as dazzling as the stars, without a trace of color. They were holy and cold, and they made people feel a bone-deep fear. The Lord of the Underworld, the Lord of the Seven Ultimate Heavens, the Supreme God who created the 5 regions, had finally arrived in the divine prefecture. His footsteps landed lightly, and the heavens and earth found it difficult to withstand his divine might. They collapsed, and huge cracks appeared across the divine prefecture. Earth fire spewed out, and mountains and rivers shifted. It was an apocalyptic scene, and the mortal world was in chaos. "Humans, you have disappointed me once again," the Lord of the Underworld said. His cold and emotionless voice resounded across the entire divine prefecture. The filthy human heart had finally angered the god, and he had come to the world again. Chapter 383. The Nether King descended, and a terrifying shockwave spread out. Everyone present was sent flying, and their blood dyed the ground red. The extreme sky dissipated, and Falling Star, Jian Yi, Jian Bodhi, and the others were also sent flying by the extreme sky divine might. Everyone landed on the ground and retreated several steps. They barely managed to stabilize themselves, but they all vomited blood. The Nether King hadn't even used a single move. Just his aura alone was enough to make the experts present suffer heavy injuries. "Run!" shouted the Eternal Night Hierarch. His eyes were filled with shock. "Do you think you can escape?" The Nether King raised his hand, and a boundless divine might spread out. His palm split open the sky, and the universe lost its color. Frost Sky Burial Flower. The palm descended, and Palace Mistress Shihua's expression changed. She gathered her true yuan and the power of the 5 tribulations to block the divine might with all her strength. With a loud bang, the frosty sky collapsed and the flowers dispersed. Blood sprayed 10 meters into the air like a waterfall. Before the brilliance in Palace Master Shihua's eyes could dim, she fell into the dust with a bang, and her body and soul vanished. Palace Mistress. Luan Fengshen's expression changed. Run! Extreme lightning, sacrifice to the heavens! Shouted the Eternal Night Hierarch anxiously. He activated his divine dagger axe and used his extreme skill. Scarlet lightning gathered and slashed down from the sky. Everyone endured the grief of losing their comrade and quickly retreated, trying their best to preserve the last of their strength. As the scarlet lightning approached, the Nether King's eyes turned cold. The lightning collapsed and disappeared. In the next moment, a cold light flashed through the god's eyes. Duke Qinghua, who was retreating, suddenly trembled. A cold light pierced through his chest, and blood spurted out. He silently fell. Qinghua! Luan Fengshen's pupils shrank. He wanted to stop and help, but Jianghua forcefully dragged him away. It's too late. Jianghua's eyes flashed with grief. His aura quickly dissipated, and he no longer had any vitality left. The number 1 Duke of the Sudden Lightning Dynasty would forever sleep in the Divine Prefecture. Everyone retreated hastily. They didn't dare to stay. At this moment, stopping meant death. There was no other outcome. At this moment, the descending deity raised his hand again. Instantly, the 9 heavens trembled, and violent waves swept out. Terrifying might gathered, and the divine technique condensed again. Heaven and earth changed color. Seeing that the divine might was about to descend, Jian Bodhi sighed deeply in his heart. He stopped retreating and conjured the light of Sutra. Endless golden light soared into the sky, piercing through the heavens and earth. With his life as the price, he unleashed the ultimate move of Buddhism to buy everyone a chance to escape. Bodhi Heart Meditation, attaining Bodhi with a single thought. A huge golden swastika appeared beneath Bodhi's feet. It shone with a dazzling brilliance. His black hair danced in the wind, and his youthful face was the memory left behind by the Buddhists. In the next moment, Bodhi disappeared. Holy light purified the world, enveloping everything within a 10-mile radius. Rumbling sounds could be heard as the ground collapsed. Bodhi's final move could destroy the heavens and earth. Not even space could withstand it. Cracks continued to spread out. Within the holy light, the Nether King was as still as a mountain. His black robe fluttered in the wind, and his starry eyes were calm. Human, leave your name. Sword Bodhi. With the endless holy light descending, the Nether King left his last grace in the divine prefecture. He raised his hand and dispersed the holy light around him. Step by step, he walked out. As the light dissipated, the heavens and the earth calmed down. Bodhi exchanged his life for the move and gave everyone a chance to escape. The Nether King watched them disappear but did not chase after them. Your Majesty, Bai Jiang knelt down and said respectfully. Return to the God's sect, the Nether King said lightly. As soon as he finished speaking, the black aura flowed and the 2 figures disappeared without a trace. It was a tragic battle. The earth was shattered, and the world was devastated. Heavy rain poured down, and the rolling dark clouds could not hide the glaring blood moon. This time, even the heavens and earth did not know how to survive this disaster. Outside the wooden house in the academy, the headmaster looked at the crying divine prefecture. His old eyes flashed with a touch of emotion. The human world did not escape this disaster after all. In the Qizhou Mountains, in the belly of the Taotai, Jiang Wangji fell silent. He looked at the young man in front of him without saying a word. The Tai Xianin reverberated. He was doing his best for the human world. In the imperial city of the Xia dynasty, in the Haowu mansion, beams of flowing light gathered. After landing, they vomited red blood and looked gloomy. Everyone knew that the human world was doomed. Don't be depressed. If even we give up, there will be no hope for the human world, the hierarch of the Eternal Night looked at everyone and said in a low voice. Luan Fengchen steadied himself and looked to the west. A touch of helplessness flashed in his eyes. Was there really any hope for the human world? Xia Zi sighed and said rationally, the Nether King's arrival is a fact. The disaster of the Divine Prefecture cannot be solved in a short time. We need to think about it at length. Before that, please take the time to heal your injuries. Yes. The hierarch of the Eternal Night, the Golden Staff Imperial Master, and the others nodded. There was indeed no good way now. It disappeared in an instant, rushing toward the academy. In the sky above the academy, the teacher walked up with his sword. He looked at Yama in front of him calmly. He had held on for 1,000 years, and finally, this day had come. At this moment, a purple ray of light came into view from the north of the academy. Dao Kuei had arrived. In the blink of an eye, he was in front of the two. Are you ready? Yama asked calmly. Sorry for the long wait. Please, the teacher said seriously. Then I shall officially begin. Yama raised his hand, and his divine power shook the sky. Raging waves surged, and thunder rumbled in the sky. Dark clouds rolled, and the atmosphere was extremely oppressive. The first palm made the heaven and earth tremble. Everything prostrated, and the majestic divine power roared out. The terrifying power made the human world cry out. Go against the yin and yang of heaven and earth, transform the qi of heaven and earth. Gather the yuan and return to one. Infinite Tai Chi gives birth to the yin and yang. The Xuani sound of Tai was activated, and the Taoist formation was activated. Black and white Qi spread out. The formation was limited to Yama's power, and it blocked the power of the destroyer physique. However, the divine power was unstoppable. God's palm origin broke through the formation and landed in front of the two of them. Dao Kuei's eyes narrowed, and the Xuani sound changed again. The 7 strings moved, and the yin-yang ancient sword appeared. It turned into 2 sword radiances and rushed up. At the same time, the Taisu's sword in the teacher's hand moved. Righteous energy surged, and with the help of the sword, they blocked the divine power together. With a bang, the divine power dissipated. On the zither strings, 5 fingers were stained with blood. The Taisu's sword hummed, and it instantly rushed up. Jiang Wangji did not care about the injury on his fingers. With his blood as a guide, he activated the formation again. The yin-yang dual swords gathered the brilliance of the 2 elements, and they fell from the sky and slashed at Yama. Good coordination. Admiration flashed in Yama's eyes. He flipped his left palm and blocked the Taisu sword. At the same time, he gathered divine power in his right palm and blocked the Tai dual swords. Unfortunately, you are still too weak. As soon as he finished speaking, divine power surged out, and the 3 swords flew back. The teacher's hand that held the sword was stained red, and he retreated 10 feet. Dual Sea of Qi. Below the battle, Mu Chengshue's eyes narrowed. He was too familiar with this situation. When he fought the martial monarch with her, the same situation happened. The autumn water flows through the 2 elements, and the sky appears in the sea of clouds. Seeing the divine power of Yama, the teacher's Taisu's sword penetrated the sky and the earth. The person who created the move used the ultimate move of the Confucian school. Dao Kuei also used his move to cooperate. The Tai Xianin formed, and thousands of flowing lights gathered, increasing the power of the ultimate move of the Confucian school. In the stormy battle of the academy, Tao and Confucianism were the first in 1,000 years to work together to fight against Yama. This battle was beyond common knowledge, and it attracted the attention of countless strong cultivators in the Divine Prefecture. While they were shocked, they could not help but feel hopeful. They did not expect that there would be 2 such strong cultivators in the Divine Prefecture. Even the ancient sages were not as strong as them. 3 disasters consummation. Somewhere in the Divine Prefecture, Yao Man, Jia Feng, and the others looked at the battle in the distance, and they were shocked. There were 2 consummation cultivators in the Divine Prefecture. In the Howell mansion, many strong cultivators were also paying attention to this earth-shattering battle. Even if they did not believe it, at this moment, they still hoped that the teacher and Dao Kuei could stop the tribulation of Yama. Luo Xingchen's eyes kept flickering. He did not know if it was an illusion or something else, but he felt that the two people's existences had surpassed the ordinary three disasters' consummation. Especially the teacher, after 1,000 years of righteousness, he had already surpassed the limits of what humans could reach. Perhaps, there was still hope in the human world. Chapter 384. Above the academy, dark clouds rolled and thunder filled the sky. For the first time in 1,000 years, Confucianism teamed up to fight against Pluto. The intense battle had reached its peak. The two of them teamed up, and the ultimate move of Confucianism pierced through heaven and earth. The two strongest people in the world opened the sky with their swords and moved the world with their guqin. Taisu and Taisu gathered the fate of Confucianism. At this moment they surpassed the limits of humans and reached a realm that had never been seen before. Above the sky, thunder stirred in the dark clouds that were pierced through. Surges of righteousness shook and spread thousands of miles away. A strange look flashed across Pluto's eyes. He didn't wait any longer and raised his god's hand. Amidst the rumbling, the thunder in the sky was guided down and gathered around the deity. Immediately, he flipped his palm and used another move. With a boom, the void above the academy collapsed rapidly. Furious thunder roared and attacked the two people in front. At this moment, Taisu's sword slashed down. The dazzling white light split the heaven and earth and shattered the furious thunder. It descended upon the deity. Oh! With a sigh of admiration, Pluto turned his left hand and blocked the sword. With a boom, the sword radiance shattered. The raging waves surged endlessly and turned everything within 1,000 feet into nothingness. Defying the yin and yang of heaven and earth, transforming the qi of heaven and earth. Return to one, Xianhuang God slaying. The moment the deity blocked the move, Dao Kuei's eyes narrowed. He took a step forward, and above the yin-yang formation, Xianhuang formation was activated. The two formations resonated with each other and shone brightly. It pressed down from all directions, slaying deities and demons. Defying the deity, your courage is commendable, but your stupidity is unparalleled. As he spoke, the aura around Pluto gushed out. His 2C of Qi reappeared in the world. His attack and defense were synchronized, blocking the power of Yin-Yang and Xianhuang. After blocking the move, the deity raised his hand again. Water waves gathered, and in a blink of an eye, the water waves turned into raging waves. The terrifying move shocked the world. Dao Kuei's expression was unusually solemn. The vital energy around him rose to its maximum. As the sound rippled, the majestic fate of Taoism lingered out again. The yin and yang swords turned into white light and spun rapidly to block the deity's move. With a loud boom, the two swords flew out. The strings of Tai Guqin broke one by one. Jiang Wangji took a few steps back, and the corner of his mouth was stained red. Dao Kuei showed signs of defeat. At the same time, Tai Su got close to the deity and slashed at the sea of qi in front of the Netherworld King's chest. Just as the divine technique was executed, he couldn't recover his qi in time. However, the other Dantian's sea of qi instantly made up for the flaw, and his protective qi blocked the Taisu sword. "Stand down," said the Nether King. His true origin spread out, and in an instant, he and his sword were both blown away. After 100 feet, the headmaster stopped and barely managed to stabilize himself. His entire right arm was dripping with blood and his injury was even more serious. Seeing this, Dao Kuei endured the injuries in his body and pulled the broken strings of the zither with his left hand. He used his blood to repair the zither and used the zither to control the sword. The profound formation was activated again. Defying the yin and yang of heaven and earth, transforming the 100 qi of heaven and earth into one, bringing the universe to nirvana. The yin-yang ancient sword spun rapidly as black and white formation runes spread out from the center of the battlefield. Piece after piece of the void collapsed and swallowed everything in the world, turning the surrounding 100 miles into a dark and cold world of death. The next moment, the two swords dashed forward, one after the other. One of them was as heavy as a mountain, while the other was as fast as a white rainbow. Once again, the sharp sword light broke through the chi sea in front of the deity's chest. Pointless struggle. The Nether King raised his hand to block the white rainbow sword light. Then, the black sword edge approached him and collided with the white rainbow sword light. With a bang, the white rainbow broke through the protective true origin and approached the deity by an inch. Silently, a drop of blood slid down from the deity's palm. Then, the wound healed and disappeared. The Nether King waved his hand and the two swords flew down, their brilliance dimming. An undefeatable deity and an undefeatable fate. The Nether King's strength was beyond comprehension. His every move was unstoppable. The situation was getting worse. The headmaster and Dao Kuei were running out of time to recover their original cultivation. Under the powerful attacks of the Nether King, the fate of the Confucian and Taoist sects had been greatly depleted. Dao Kuei, let's begin. The headmaster glanced at Jiang Wangji, who was not far away. His eyes flashed with determination as he said seriously. Hearing the headmaster's reminder, Jiang Wangji's expression became serious. He nodded without hesitation. The Tai Guqin moved. The two swords rose from the ground and flew back into the Tai Guqin. As the Xian sound played, the headmaster's body quickly turned into ashes. The thousand-year fate of the Confucian sect rose to the extreme. Taisu dispersed and disappeared without a trace. Go against the yin and yang of heaven and earth, turn into the chi of heaven and earth, return to the origin, and reverse life and death. The last move, the last formation. The spiritual chi within 100 miles gathered rapidly and turned into a huge formation. The figure of Dao Kuei who was playing the Guqin had turned into ashes. The formation reversed life and death, turned life into a path of death, and trapped the deity. In the formation, the Nether King looked at the swirling storm around him. His calm eyes lit up. The last formation was not bad. In the storm, the Xian sound resounded through the 9 heavens and pressed down on the deity. The protective true origin gathered around the Nether King to block the Xian sound. However, the Xian sound did not stop. It kept reverberating in the formation. The true origin in the Nether King's body was greatly depleted. Due to his early arrival, a flaw appeared in the protective true origin. In an instant, the protective true origin flickered. At this moment, Taisu appeared and turned into a white light that broke through the deity's body. With a bang, the protective true origin scattered. Taisu entered the Nether King's body and penetrated the sea of chi in his chest. At this moment, endless righteous energy entered the deity's body. Along with the Confucian faction's 1,000 years of luck, it disappeared in an instant. As the righteous energy entered the Nether King's body, the true origin in his body revolved to resist, suppressing the strange force in his body. At the same time, the deity endured the pain in his chest and used the deity's move again. The blue heavenly fire surged and roared, engulfing the 9 heavens and 10 earths. The heavenly fire's power was unstoppable. The formation that trapped the deity could not hold on any longer. With a bang, it collapsed. The formation dissipated, and the Tai Guqin fell from the sky. When it was about to hit the ground, Dao Kuei's figure appeared. It was blurry and was only a remnant soul. Cherish the last time I left you. The Nether King's body slowly descended. He did not care about Jiang Wangji, who had lost his ability to fight. He walked step by step to the front of the little white horse. His eyes narrowed, and a strange light flashed in his eyes. It was strange that the Shieji's origin was in the body of an ordinary horse. As the divine power approached, the little white horse cried out and trembled. It was as if it had foreseen its fate. Not far away, Mu Chengxue was shocked. He moved his sword and his body trembled. His speed was so fast that it was shocking. Before the leaves could fall, the sword had already taken his life. The Nether King did not move. His eyes flashed, and a bloody mist gushed out. A cold light penetrated his body, bringing with it a large waterfall of blood. Don't sacrifice yourself needlessly. Let's go. Dao Kuei's soul flashed and took a step forward. He carried the heavily injured Mu Qingxue and left quickly. The Nether King did not chase after them. He looked at the white horse in front of him and raised the hand of God. A boundless suction force appeared from his palm and extracted the Xieji's origin. Roar! The little white horse's life was threatened. A deafening roar of a beast was heard. The little ape rushed out. Its body grew and quickly returned to its original form. Its huge body appeared and stomped down, shaking the heavens and earth. The little white horse was frightened. It whinnied and urged the former to escape quickly. The little ape had passed the innate tribulation and was very powerful. However, in front of the creator of the world, all struggles were futile. Before the huge foot even touched the body of the god, the ape's body had already begun to disintegrate. It was difficult to bear the backlash of the divine power. With a bang, blood and bones filled the sky. The ape died and disappeared. The little white horse whinnied. Its consciousness gradually dissipated. The Xieji's origin left its body and fell into the hands of the god. The next moment, a black aura swirled. The Nether King left and disappeared. The dilapidated academy was full of devastation. The aftermath of the great battle destroyed the sacred land of Xia dynasty. The headmaster and Dao Kuei failed in the end. They could not stop the divine power of the Nether King. The power of the god made it difficult for humans to see any hope. In the desolate city, Mu Bai, who had witnessed the great battle, was silent. In the sword pool, the chaos sword essence was still floating silently. The sword on the academy's sword was dazzling. The fog in the heart of the swordsman was even thicker. If it was not cleared, they would never see the light of day. In the Qizhou Mountains, Dao Kuei appeared with Mu Qingxue. His blurry soul was even weaker. The woman was unconscious. Although she was lucky enough to avoid being hit, she was still seriously injured. Jiang Wangji sighed. He glanced at the woman in front of him and plucked the strings with his soul power. In the sound, the last bit of Dao Kuei's spirit dissipated, turning into the purest energy and entering Mu Qingxue's body. This is all I can do. I'll leave the rest to you. Before Dao Kuei disappeared, the last array spread out in the Qizhou Mountains. Spiritual qi gathered and poured into the woman's body. Tai whinnied and accompanied its master on the last journey. Then, it collapsed inch by inch and dissipated in the array. Heaven and earth did not know how to survive this divine tribulation. Only the humans themselves could work hard and search for a future that they did not know existed. In the imperial city of the Xia dynasty, the Eternal Night Hierarch and the others were still healing. Even the headmaster and Dao Kuei had been defeated. They did not know what else they could do. However, everyone knew that if they gave up, there would be no more hope in the world. The aftermath of the gods' descent continued to spread throughout the divine prefecture. Natural disasters occurred frequently and chaos broke out everywhere. Millions of people died in the disaster. The end of the divine prefecture was close at hand. The people cried and prayed that the martial marquises who had saved the Xia dynasty time and time again could lead the Xia dynasty through this crisis. However, in the face of the supreme power, even the martial marquises of the Xia dynasty could not do anything this time. They silently looked at the crying world and sighed in their hearts. In the dark abyss of the Eternal Night Hierarch, the Lord of the Underworld transformed into the essence of the Bai Hen and repaired the flaws of the seven ultimate divine body. My lord, the whereabouts of the last two divine beasts have been found. Do you need me to go and bring them back? Bai Jiang knelt and asked. No, I can do it myself. Continue to use the divine cannon to find the phoenix origin. Also, prepare to pull back the other four regions, the Lord of the Underworld said calmly. Yes. Bai Jiang respectfully accepted the order and immediately retreated. After Bai Jiang left, the Lord of the Underworld stood quietly and looked out of the divine prefecture. A cold light flashed in his calm eyes. The divine prefecture was incomplete and his power could not completely descend. Although it was enough to cleanse the divine prefecture again, it was still too troublesome. Pulling back the other 4 regions was imperative. However, before that, he had to find the remaining essence of the divine beasts and repair the flaws that appeared when the 7 ultimate divine body descended. Chapter 385. In the divine great land, the blood moon shone high up in the sky. More and more disasters occurred. Broken mountain ranges, rivers, collapsed hills, and surging earth fire could be seen everywhere. The heaven and earth wept, shedding tears for this divine tribulation. Heavy rain poured down, blurring the eyes of all living beings. The northern Meng imperial court, Great Xia, the barbarian dynasty, and even the western dynasties were filled with the cries of the common people. At this moment, there was no distinction between the nobles and the commoners. The filth in the hearts of the people had attracted the wrath of the king of hell, and no one could escape. The tragedy of 30,000 years ago reappeared, and the sages were unable to stop it. In the face of the supreme master of the 7 extinction celestial realm, the insignificance of mankind was undoubtedly displayed. In the imperial city of the Great Xia dynasty, Xia Zi looked at the blood moon in the sky that had stopped descending. His eyes were unusually heavy. The doomsday of the divine prefecture had arrived, but there was no hope at all. The eternal night hierarch walked over and looked at the emperor of Grand Xia beside him. He said in a deep voice, "Let me remind you that Grand Xia's imperial city is no longer a safe place. Once the Nether King arrives, this place will instantly turn into a land of calamity. I hope that you will be prepared and bring the people you should bring away as soon as possible." Xia Zi sighed deeply and shifted his gaze towards the imperial palace. He said softly, "There's no need. Imperial Mother won't leave. Moreover, there's nowhere else in this world that she can go." Now that the entire divine continent had fallen into the divine tribulation, there was no safe place. No matter where they went, it was the same. The only difference was the time. If they couldn't overcome this divine tribulation, the human world would fall into hell forever. The eternal night hierarch didn't try to persuade him anymore. He changed the topic and said seriously, "The Nether King's strength is too strong. No one can fight against his divine might directly. We have to find his weakness as soon as possible. I'm going to make a trip to the Eternal Night Hierarch and think of a way to take back the Light Scroll." Hearing this, Xia Zi was startled. His expression changed slightly as he said, "Sect Master, please reconsider. This is too risky. Once you encounter the Nether King, you will definitely die. This is the only way now. I'll be careful. I'll go in after he leaves," the Eternal Night Hierarch said seriously. Xia Zi pondered for a moment and said in a deep voice, "I'll go with the sect master so that we can take care of each other." "No need." The Eternal Night Hierarch shook his head and said, "One more person means one more chance of being discovered. Moreover, if we really meet the Nether King, it will be useless no matter how many people we send." Xia Zi fell silent. After a brief moment, he sighed and warned, "Be careful. If you can't do it, don't force yourself. I know what to do." The Eternal Night Hierarch nodded and left without further delay. East of Grand Xia, in the Ascension Valley, a black aura gathered. The Lord of the Abyss had descended. He stepped into the spatial tunnel and disappeared without a trace. Now, only Yazi and Taotai were left alive in the divine Great Land and the 4 extremes. Logically speaking, Taotai was closer to them. However, for the gods, there was no difference between who was closer and who was closer. Compared to Yazi, Taotai was just luckier. The Netherworld King did not choose him as his first target. The deities of the 4 extreme realms walked out. Looking at the roaring space turbulence in front of them, they narrowed their eyes. Raising his god's hand, an incomparably majestic divine might gathered. With a flip of his palm, divine might gushed forth, dispersing the spatial turbulence as a flat path appeared. When the Lord of the Abyss descended, the entire 4 extremes shook violently. Cracking sounds could be heard in the sky. Unable to withstand the divine might, huge cracks appeared in the sky. With the appearance of the deities, the four extremes fell into a state of panic. Not only the martial artists, but even the common people could feel the bone-deep pressure. It was as if the sky was collapsing, causing fear to rise in their hearts. Everyone prostrated themselves, not even daring to breathe loudly for fear of startling the heavens. The Xiantian experts of the four great dynasties looked at the horizon with a grave expression. They retracted their qi and concealed their aura. At the peak of the 9 heavens, the Lord of the Abyss stood in the air. He took a step forward and his figure dispersed. Under the cliff of the half-moon mountain, divine might descended from the heavens. The Lord of the Abyss appeared and walked towards the valley without stopping. Not long after, endless white fog covered the path ahead, trying to obstruct the deities. However, how could the Lord of the Abyss's path be obstructed by fog? The divine might spread out, and the white fog quickly dispersed and disappeared. Roar! In the depths of the valley, Yazi trembled in fear. With a low roar, it spread its wings and tried to escape. Before the divine might, the vengeful beast did not even have the thought of resisting. It immediately fled. You want to escape? Too late. The Lord of the Abyss raised his hand, and a boundless suction force spread out. Heaven and earth turned solemn, and the beast quickly retreated. Yazi could not spread its wings even if it had wings. It roared in fear. In front of the divine might, all resistance was futile. It could only accept its fate of death. A red and black ball of light flew out, and the beast's consciousness gradually dispersed. It crashed onto the ground with a bang, and dust filled the sky. In the four extreme holy lands, Ronglu walked out of the palace and looked at the half-moon mountain with a grave expression. Was this the Lord of the Abyss? Luan Fengchen and the others had indeed failed. At the same time, outside the Eternal Night Divine Sect, the Eternal Night Hierarch appeared. After sensing that the divine might was gone, he quickly rushed in. The power of the smoke cloud divine spear was astonishing. The experts of the divine sect could not stop it. They could only watch as the former rushed in. In the Void Temple, Bai Jiang, who had been looking for Feng Yuan, heard the battle outside. His eyes turned cold. He actually dared to come back. When Wu Guan turned around, the Eternal Night Hierarch also appeared at the entrance of the Void Temple. When enemies met, their eyes were exceptionally red. Without any greetings, he rushed out with murderous intent. The smoke cloud divine spear blocked the sword. The two figures did not stop at all and directly rushed toward the Eternal Night divine scripture floating in the void. Seeing the former's movement, Bai Zhang's expression turned cold. He changed the direction of his sword and rushed forward. The Eternal Night Hierarch leaned to the side and blocked the sword with his right hand. He condensed energy in his left hand and grabbed the Eternal Night divine scripture. The moment the divine scripture entered his hand, the sword light changed again and slashed down. The sharp and cold light pierced the mind. The Eternal Night Hierarch withdrew his hand and condensed energy in his fingers to repel the sword light. Then, he waved the divine spear and slashed at Wu Guan. Bai Jiang leaned back and avoided the divine spear. Then, he turned his sword around and attacked again. In front of the Eternal Night divine scripture, they fought in close combat. Every move was deadly, and every move was dangerous. Neither of them showed any mercy, and every move was filled with the coldest killing intent, seeking to take their opponent's life. The divine scripture floated and changed hands between the two. The crisscrossing sword and the light of the spear made people not dare to be careless. With a bang, the palm hit Wu Guan's body. The Eternal Night Hierarch, whose cultivation was higher, gained the upper hand. He pushed back the former with one palm, grabbed the Eternal Night divine scripture, and left quickly. Do you think you can leave? Bai Zhang's eyes darkened. Black energy surged around his body and the power of the Nether King rose. He actually showed signs of entering the third calamity. An extremely fast figure blocked the Eternal Night Hierarch's path of retreat. His sword aura became heavier and heavier. Each strike was more ruthless than the last. The Eternal Knight Hierarch didn't want to fight for a long time. He blocked a few moves and used the momentum to retreat. Wu Guan's figure flashed and quickly caught up with him. In a flash, the two figures sped out one after another. Before the experts of the divine sect could get close to them, they were struck by the sharp radiance of the two divine weapons and turned into blood and bones, splitting into pieces. Just as the two of them were about to leave the Eternal Knight Hierarch, a terrifying pressure descended. The Nether King walked out from the black light. He had returned from the four extremes. "Traitor, your courage has made me look at you in a new light." The Nether King looked at the person in front of him coldly. Seeing the Nether King's return, the Eternal Knight Hierarch's expression changed. He pushed his cultivation to the limit and slashed down with his spear. The Nether King raised his hand to block the lightning. Then, with a flip of his palm, divine power surged out. It seemed like a casual palm, but it was still so powerful that it made it difficult to breathe. The Eternal Knight Hierarch's eyes narrowed. His cultivation rose endlessly and rushed to the sky. He gathered tens of thousands of lightning bolts on his spear and blocked the divine power head-on. The strongest expert in the world who was the closest to the three calamities' completion landed with his most powerful move. In the midst of 1,000 screams, the void shattered inch by inch. The lightning collided with the divine power, and the terrifying aftermath swept out. "Ah!" With a muffled groan, the Eternal Knight Hierarch retreated several steps. Blood dripped from the corner of his mouth. He was seriously injured. The divine power was irreversible. Although the Nether King's power in the divine prefecture was less than 20%, it was still beyond human power. The absolute gap in strength made people despair. "Luoli, for the sake of our relationship as master and servant, I'll show you one last move. I'll show you the true face of the heavens." As he spoke, the Nether King slowly lifted his god's hand. A moment later, the heavens and earth changed as thunder rumbled in all directions. Raging gales raged as the heavens and earth collapsed. Blazing divine flames appeared, illuminating the 9 heavens. In the face of death, the Eternal Knight Hierarch's expression was unusually serious. He stomped his foot, and the red lightning around him surged. He gathered all his cultivation on the spear. He knew that if he couldn't block this move, he would never be able to go back. Just at this critical moment, in the distance, beams of extremely powerful sword light flashed past. They fell from the sky like meteors and slashed toward the deity. "Oh!" A strange look flashed in the Nether King's eyes. He raised his palm and raised it to the sky. Divine flames spread out and blocked the falling sword rain. In the rumbling, the earth around the deity was completely destroyed by the sword rain and kept sinking. Seeing this, the Eternal Knight Hierarch slashed down with his spear. Then, he stopped fighting and quickly retreated. In the sky full of sword rain, the Nether King flipped his left hand and blocked the spear light. His 2 palms blocked the 2 moves. His divine body was as immovable as a mountain. From the beginning to the end, he didn't even move half a step. When the sword rain fell, the Nether King waved his hand to disperse the aftermath. He looked in the direction of the sword rain and said indifferently, "Swordsman, I accept your challenge. However, don't let the deity wait for too long." In front of the sword pool in Barren City, Mubai stood there calmly. The sword intent around him flickered, sometimes strong and sometimes weak. As the number 1 swordsman in the divine prefecture who had just broken out of his cocoon, he sent a challenge to the deity for the sake of swordsmanship and for the sake of the people. "Master." Jian Er's expression was full of worry. Although his master was strong, when facing the deity who was beyond human power, his chances of winning were too slim. Mubai didn't say anything. He still stood quietly in front of the sword pool and looked at the sword in the pool. The previous battle in the academy made him gradually understand what the headmaster meant. Once upon a time, when he was still an ignorant young man, the reason he picked up the sword was very simple. It was to protect Barren City. However, he didn't know when it started, but his sword slowly lost its original intention. Practicing the sword, comprehending the sword, and waiting for the sword, there was only the sword in his life. He walked too far, and he had long forgotten to look back. It turned out that it was lonely at the top. It was just that his sword heart had long left the human world. That was why he couldn't feel the warmth that had never disappeared beside him. Chapter 386. In the imperial city of Grand Xia, the Eternal Night Hierarch returned with heavy injuries, but he also brought back the crucial Eternal Night scripture. There were too few records about the Nether King in the mortal world. Only the Ming scripture might have some useful clues. In the Haowu royal manor, Luo Fei condensed her energy and activated the Eternal Night scripture. The heavenly scripture responded, and rings of golden light spread out. Did you find it? Xia Zi asked. Yes. Luo Fei nodded and said with a serious expression, there's good news and bad news. What are they? Xia Zi asked. Luo Fei waved her hand and put away the scripture. She slowly said, the good news is that the Nether King does have a weakness. Back then, he wasn't able to collect all of the source energy. In addition, he descended early this time, causing the 7 ultimate divine body to be unable to fully adapt to the mortal world. During the process of transforming the world's spiritual energy, there will be serious true essence fluctuations or even a break. However, the 7 ultimate divine body also has 2 chi Cs. This weakness can be made up to the greatest extent. Luo Fei's expression turned serious and she said, the bad news is that because the divine prefecture is incomplete, the Nether King can only descend with 20% of his strength. Once the Nether King finds the source energy of the other god beasts and makes up for the 7 ultimate divine bodies' flaw, he can pull the other 4 regions back. At that time, his main body's strength will be able to completely descend without any restrictions. Hearing the former's words, Xia Zi fell silent. This was truly despairing news. Currently, the Netherworld King's strength was already unrivaled. If he were to really pull the other 4 domains back to his original strength, even if all the innate experts in the 5 domains combined, they would not be able to withstand a single blow from him. Previously, the Nether King's aura temporarily disappeared from the divine prefecture. He should have gone to the 4 extremities. Ning Chen once said that the 4 extremities didn't only have the phoenix, but also the Yazi. Now it seems that the Yazi's source energy must have been taken by the Nether King. Xia Zi thought for a long time before coming back to his senses. Yes. Luo Fei nodded and said, so, we don't have much time left. We must stop the Nether King's actions as soon as possible. Once the Nether King obtains all of the god beast source energy and makes up for the divine body's flaw, everything will be too late. Right at this moment, Luan Fengchen walked in from outside and said seriously, we can learn from the method Ning Chen and Mu Qingxue used to break the dual Qi Si. Right now, the biggest problem is how to block the terrifying power of the Nether King's attack. Xia Zi's expression was solemn as he said, it is indeed troublesome. Even with his extreme speed restraining him, the might of the Nether King's moves is not something an ordinary person can block. Apart from the Eternal Night Hierarch, no one in the 2 realms can block a single move from the Nether King. According to the characteristics of our martial arts, Brother Xia has the demon Yuan, so he is the least affected by Pluto's power. He is the best choice for attacking. As for controlling him, Jiang Hua and I are the best choices. Luo Xingchen has the Star Scar Bow, and is good at long-range attacks. He can stay outside of the battle. However, if we want to limit the power of Pluto's attacks, we need at least one more person. Originally, Wang Yu would be the best choice. Unfortunately, he has lost half of his origin, and will need some time to recover. Luan Fengchen analyzed calmly. I'll fill this vacancy, Madame Luofei said in a soft voice. Luan Fengchen was slightly startled and looked at him, not understanding what he meant. No. Xia Zi's expression was cold as he directly refused, with just the moon scroll, it is impossible to restrict the Nether King's attacks. If you force it, the backlash is not something you can withstand. Madame Luofei walked forward, a gentle expression appearing on her beautiful face as she said, right now, there is no other way. If we can't send the Nether King back, then there is no hope for the human world. Since that is the case, we might as well take a risk and try. Luan Fengchen also saw some clues, but he didn't interrupt, leaving the decision to the two of them. Each of them was extremely clear that against the Nether King, even if they worked together, the chances of success were very small. This might be their last battle before they died. The Emperor's eyes were heavy. He didn't want to agree, but he had no reason to refuse. This human world had already become hell. If they wanted to go against the gods, they would naturally have to pay the most disastrous price. Whether or not they could bear it, they had no other choice. Madame Luofei smiled and said, "This matter has been decided. The most important thing right now is to choose the person to block the Nether King's attacks. Xia Zi, if you don't want me to die, then try your best. Before I can't hold on any longer, quickly send the Nether King back to the 7 extinction heavens. Amitba, count this old monk in." Du Yi Temple's abbot walked over and said, "Grandmaster has the Vajra unbreakable body. If you are willing to help, then you are truly the best choice," Luan Fengchen politely said. "This Marquis can also count me in." Marquis Triumph also walked in. Since everyone is here, then the Golden Staff has no reason to refuse. The Golden Staff Imperial Tutor appeared and helplessly smiled. Xian Tian also walked into the hall and calmly said, "Just Brother Xia alone will be too difficult. Count me in." In the front hall of King Haowu's manor, other than the Eternal Night Hierarch who was in seclusion, everyone else had gathered to discuss how to deal with the Nether King. "Before we formally face the Nether King, we need to first practice and develop a tacit understanding," suggested Luan Fengchen. Xia Zi thought for a moment and said, "I will ask Miss Qingning to be the person to imitate the Nether King's attacks. As long as we suppress our cultivation to the peak of the Ho Tian realm, we will be able to do as we please." Luan Fengchen nodded. "That's good." Just as everyone was discussing, the Eternal Night God Sect's Dark Abyss Wu Guan knelt down and begged for forgiveness. Losing the Eternal Night Divine Scripture was his negligence. "Stand up. You've already done your best. Luo Li's strength is already close to the peak of the human race. She truly isn't someone you can stop," said the Nether King. "Many thanks for Master's forgiveness." Bai Jiang stood up. Hearing that name, the killing intent in his eyes was difficult to conceal. "Do you really want to kill him?" asked the Nether King. "Master's grand plan is more important. This subordinate's personal enmity with Luo Li isn't worth mentioning." Bai Jiang forcefully concealed the killing intent in his eyes. "Ha!" The Nether King calmly smiled. "I will give you that chance. But before that, you should complete the task I gave you." "Yes." Bai Jiang respectfully accepted the order and turned to leave. Now that they had lost the Eternal Night Divine Scripture, they couldn't find Feng Yuan's whereabouts for now. However, they still had to quickly prepare to pull back the 4 regions. After Wu Guan left, the Nether King also disappeared. The Dark Abyss returned to silence. Within the Grand Xia's imperial city, King Haowu's manor, Qingning had been invited over. Just as the battle was about to begin, Worryless appeared and also joined the battle. The Nether King's dual Qi Si's power allows him to attack and defend at the same time. It'll be difficult for Miss Qingning to imitate him. "I can't help you against the Nether King, so I'll help you test it out," said Worryless. "Many thanks," said Xia Zi earnestly. Please. Jiang Hua and Luan Fengchen's silhouettes flickered, instantly appearing in the middle of the battle. Saber lights flashed, dazzling the eyes. Worryless waved her hand. Heaven and earth's spiritual chi condensed, forming a barrier in front of the saber light. At the same time, Qingning condensed her yuan with a flip of her palm, and a powerful palm energy swept out toward the two of them. The saber light's momentum changed, and as her palm shot out, it rapidly cut through the air, sealing the power of her attack. Worryless attacked again. She gathered her spiritual chi and blocked the saber light. At this moment, outside the battle, Xing Chen drew his bow. A green arrow flew out, and in the blink of an eye, it had already reached the battle. Luofei simultaneously activated the scroll of moon, and moonlight spread out. Heaven and earth instantly froze. However, Xiantian power couldn't be controlled by Ho Tian. She forcefully broke through the shackles, and a powerful palm energy roared out. Marquis Kaixuan, the Golden Staff Imperial Master, and the Buddha in the mortal world joined hands to block the Xiantian palm energy. However, with a bang, the three of them were forced back several steps, and they barely managed to block it. Demonic Sword, Reincarnation. The demonic sword moved, and Reincarnation took a breath. At the moment when Qing Ning's palm shot out, the sword rushed into the battle. It was the moment when the Nether King's Jin Yuan ran out. The clear sword was unsheathed at the same time. The two swords joined forces and attacked Qing Ning's Qi Si. Qing Ning couldn't recover her Jin Yuan in time. Worryless turned her palm to block the sword. At this moment, an extremely fast saber light appeared again, hindering Worryless from blocking the attack. In an instant, the demonic sword and the clear sword arrived. Qing Ning reached out and grabbed the demonic sword. With a clang, she blocked the clear sword's attack. The two swords were restrained, and the arrow light appeared again. It broke through the air and rushed toward Qing Ning's Dantian Sea of Qi. However, at this moment, the worryless palm energy arrived and blocked the arrow light. Then, the palm energy didn't decrease, and it slammed toward the two people in front of it. The Buddha in the mortal world, the Golden Staff Imperial Master, and the others who were supposed to block the attack couldn't help in time. Xia Zi and Xian Tian flew out, and the situation was instantly broken. "Everyone, stop," Qing Ning said calmly. Since the situation was broken, everyone stopped and silently reflected on the mistakes in the battle just now. Among them, their tacit understanding was the biggest problem. Attack, defense, and balance. If they didn't cooperate well, they would be instantly defeated by the Nether King like just now. The blood moon hung high in the sky, and under the moon, the battle had begun once more. Everyone practiced and reflected over and over again, constantly perfecting the tacit understanding between offense and defense. In the little time left, they did their best to add a sliver of hope for the future. After countless times of practice, everyone gradually grasped the key points and suppressed the power of the two people in the formation. When the battle ended, Worryless looked at everyone in front of her and said softly, "The difference in power between the Nether King and all of you might be bigger than what we practiced before. Therefore, during the real battle, all of you must be very careful." When she and Qing Ning worked together, they could only imitate the Netherworld King's attack and defense style. However, the Netherworld King's power was the biggest problem. If they couldn't coordinate with each other to limit the power of his moves, no one would be able to block the Netherworld King's power. In other words, once a loophole appeared in the confinement killing array, it would immediately be broken. "Lady Worryless, don't worry." Before she finished speaking, Xia Zi suddenly stopped and looked toward the sky. Her expression changed. In the sky above the Imperial City, a black aura gathered. Amidst a strong pressure, the Nether King appeared. He looked at everyone below and said indifferently, "So, all of you are here. This saves me the trouble of looking for you one by one. Xia Zi, where's the Divine Codex?" "The Divine Codex is in my hands. Let's see if you have the power to take it," Xia Zi replied coldly. Chapter 387. The appearance of the Nether King signified the arrival of Doomsday. The imperial city of Great Xia fell into a state of panic. Cracks spread rapidly in the imperial city. Countless houses collapsed, and the Yin River overflowed. Half of the city was destroyed in an instant. The nobles were sorrowful, and the common people were crying. On the day of the great calamity, there was no difference in status. The good, the bad, and the ugly were buried forever in the calamity. Wang Yu and Qing Ning's expressions changed. One returned to the Marquis mansion, while the other returned to the imperial palace to protect the people they cherished the most in their lives. In the Howlu mansion, many figures jumped into the sky. In the void, a great battle was about to break out. Oh? Seems like you found a way to deal with the 7 ultimate divine body. Don't disappoint the god, the Nether King said as he glanced at everyone. As you wish. Luan Fengchen and Jiang Hua were the first to attack. Their bodies moved, and saber light appeared. The sharp edge flew out with the wind. It was so fast that it disappeared in the blink of an eye. The Nether King was as still as a mountain. He opened his palm to block the sharp edge of the 2 sabers. Blood blade. Qin Yu quickly turned around and dodged the god's origin palm. A swift and fierce killing light streaked past. The 2 blades that only attacked and did not defend were as fast as moving clouds and flowing water. There was not the slightest bit of stagnation. This was a decisiveness that did not care about life and death. At the same time, Falling Star waved his hand and drew the bow. Thousands of air currents gathered, and a green arrow appeared. It targeted the vital point of the Nether King's Dantian. When the arrow was shot out, it gathered energy and drew qi. The space trembled, and a dazzling light streaked across the sky. It went straight for the god's sea of qi. The Nether King turned his palm and condensed energy. Spiritual qi converged within a radius of 1,000 feet. The green arrow stopped, unable to move forward. In the next moment, he unleashed his palm origin qi with an earth-shattering momentum. When the god attacked, Luo Fei's expression turned serious. Her aura was pushed to the limit, and the moonlight spread out, trapping the sky and locking the earth. In an instant, the wind stopped, and the world became solemn. The scroll of moon appeared, blocking the god's attack. Oh? The Nether King's eyes flashed. He didn't stop his attack. He was interested in this killing array. When the palm energy got close, the 2 sabers turned back and avoided the god's attack. The 2 swords followed, and the attack was fierce and ruthless. Fast, fast, fast sabers, each saber faster than the previous one. Heavy, heavy saber, each strike heavier than the previous one. The saber and the sword worked together to break through the divine power, leaving no gaps. At the same time, the light of the arrows streaked through the 4 figures, aiding the formation. Madame Luofei's essence locked divine technique and the scroll of moon locked down space, buying time for the 4 of them. Everyone knew how terrifying the Nether King's palm was. The best way to deal with it was to use offense to counter offense and reduce the chances of the Nether King making a move. Not bad. The Nether King waved his hand to block wave after wave of attacks. A trace of admiration flashed in his eyes. This was the first time a stalemate had occurred since the advent of the gods. The masters of the divine Great Land and the 4 extremes had joined forces. They had abandoned life and death in order to leave behind the last hope for the human world. When they attacked and cooperated, they no longer had any distracting thoughts. Their spirits were unprecedentedly focused. They had given their all in this battle. Are you ready? I'm going to officially begin. With a flip of his palm, the Nether King blasted away the sword and saber in front of him. He then raised his god's hand as a bright light radiated from his body. Terrifying waves of energy gushing forth. When the divine power was released, Madame Luofei's delicate body trembled slightly. The backlash had injured her body. The howling divine technique possessed astonishing might. The extreme speed of the sealing technique, the tip of the arrow, and the restriction of the scroll of the full moon. The might of the deity's technique had already weakened by several degrees. However, at this moment, it was still as terrifying as before, causing everyone to feel fear. Vast military might. Victorious Return stepped forward and waved his saber. The military might shook the world. The Golden Staff State Preceptor and the Buddha in the mortal world joined forces to resist the divine power of the Nether King. The saber slashed down, dazzling the world. The palm power collapsed, but the aftermath continued to attack. The 3 of them retreated several steps, their mouths overflowing with blood. The moment the 3 of them barely managed to resist the divine power, the demon sword and clear sword swept out at the same time. The 2 swords were like heavy mountains, piercing toward the Nether King's dantian. The Nether King turned his palm to block the sword. One of his dantian's dantian shook. He couldn't recover his dantian's dantian for a short period of time. The other dantian's dantian made up for it. The divine power gathered in front of him and turned into a protective shield, blocking the sword and saber. Rivers and mountains drink hatred, blood maples October red. Luan Fengchen gathered his essence to help the saber, and the saber turned into thousands of blood maples. In an instant, countless saber edges swept out with the wind, breaking the divine power's protective true yuan. Moon Shadow. With the help of the saber, the moon shadow disappeared, and the formless edges slashed down. The vibrating protective true yuan blocked the combined might of the two techniques. Then, the clear sword spun rapidly, drawing the true yuan from the two sabers, and pierced toward the Nether King's dantian. The three waves of attacks hit the same spot, and the protective true yuan shook violently. At this moment, the demon sword carried the boundless demon chi, and the strongest attack once again broke toward the Nether King's dantian. In front of the divine power, a flaw finally appeared in the divine power's protective chi. The sword's momentum was exhausted, and the demon chi dissipated. A crack also appeared on the divine power's protective chi. At this moment, 3 green arrows appeared, each faster than the previous one, and crashed into the crack. Without any hesitation, the 3 arrows split the sky and finally broke through the divine power's protective chi. The last arrow, bearing everyone's efforts, instantly reached the divine power's dantian. Not bad. Unfortunately, it's still too slow. The god's hand blocked the arrow, and a drop of blood dripped down. The green arrow scattered, and the Nether King disappeared. It was the first time he moved since the battle started. Buddha, you should be the first. The divine power appeared in front of the Buddha in the mortal world. His eyes were cold, and there was no trace of human emotions. He turned his palm and struck. The Du-E Temple's abbot's body trembled. He wanted to block the attack, but it was too late. The divine power descended, and the indestructible Vajra body shattered. His Buddhist bones shattered, and blood spurted out like rain. The divine power fell from the sky and crashed onto the ground. The Buddha in the mortal world disappeared. Abbot! Great Master! Xia Zi and Luan Fengchen's pupils shrank, and they said sorrowfully. Regardless of the past grudges, today, they were all comrades. Under the divine power, even the Buddha in the mortal world, who had the indestructible Vajra body, couldn't block a single attack. Next, you! The divine power raised his hand, and the energy in his palm roared. It swept towards the golden staff imperial teacher, who was the closest to him. Everyone wanted to trap the divine power, but it was already too late. The divine power descended, and death was imminent. The golden staff imperial teacher didn't show any sorrow. He laughed mockingly, and the cautiousness he had suppressed all his life was released at this moment. 7 extinction heavens, I will wait for you in hell. The Northern Meng imperial teacher, one of the strongest 5, was the legend of a generation. With his last arrogant words, his body shattered, and his soul returned to heaven and earth. Imperial teacher. They didn't have time to cry out in sorrow, and their eyes were filled with pain. They couldn't go against the heavens, and they couldn't resist the divine power. The road ahead was so difficult, and they couldn't see any hope. Could it be that they really couldn't pass this divine tribulation? Everyone's determination started to waver. Luofei, it's your turn. The Nether King looked over, and a blue divine flame roared. He struck out with his palm, and death enveloped him. Careful! Xia Zi's eyes trembled. He didn't have time to move forward, and a devil aura surged out from his body. The devil sword slashed down, blocking the divine flame. Void Extreme Overturn. The mysterious heaven sword cooperated with his move, and the clear sword condensed its essence and quickly slashed out. The heaven-burying sword released an extremely bright light. The two swords flowed together, turning into a resplendent sword light that crashed into the destructive divine flame. The divine flame paused for a moment, but in the next moment, it broke through the sword light and arrived in front of Luofei. Farewell. Luofei looked at Xia Zi with a smile. Her eyes flashed with reluctance and reluctance. Unfortunately, she couldn't tell him the words in her heart in the end. The divine flame arrived, and the moon scroll blocked the attack. Seeing that the end of the beauty was irreversible, a white figure rushed over from the sky and instantly arrived behind Luofei. She channeled her power, and the heavenly book closed. Under the moon, frost spread out for thousands of feet, and ice and snow gathered, blocking the divine flame. Seeing the figure that appeared, everyone's body trembled, and their faces were filled with disbelief. White clothes appeared, and his long black and white hair fluttered in the wind. His eyes were calm, and he didn't have the slightest fear even when facing a divine power. Knowing destiny, knowing destiny. The knowing destiny Marquis, who had disappeared for a long time, reappeared in the world. His extraordinary appearance made it hard for people to look away. I've been waiting for you, knowing destiny Marquis. Seeing the youth in front of him, the Nether King's eyes finally flashed with a different light. Nether King, the path of humanity must be walked by humans themselves. Since you created the world, you shouldn't interfere, said Ningchen calmly. The human heart is filthy, and they don't know how to repent. Only by destroying them can they be reborn, said the Nether King indifferently. Ningchen narrowed his eyes, and his gaze gradually turned cold. He replied, if that's the case, I will stop you at all costs. I won't stop until I die. Then use your strength to prove that you have the ability. The Nether King raised his hand, and a wild mist swirled around him. Immediately, the sky changed color, and lightning covered the sky. A terrifying sea of lightning condensed in his hand, and a power that surpassed the heavens and earth pressed down, making people feel a bone-deep fear. Careful! Xia Zi and the others cried out in alarm when they saw how terrifying the god's technique was. It's fine. Ning Chen raised his hand to stop them. He stood in the wind, unmoving like a mountain. In the next moment, the Nether King's palm pressed down, and the divine lightning swept out with a destructive power. Wherever it passed, the space couldn't withstand the divine power, and large areas collapsed. When the divine power arrived, Ning Chen's eyes narrowed. The aura around him rose to the extreme, and the phenomena of life and death continued to evolve. The 4 scrolls of reincarnation blocked the divine power together. The most extreme collision. With a loud bang, 1,000 feet of space collapsed, and a pitch-black crack appeared, reaching hundreds of miles away. The chaotic airflow surged endlessly. In the raging wind, the divine lightning dissipated, and the knowing destiny state stood firm. After one move, the god stopped. He looked at the youth in front of him with admiration in his eyes. He said, knowing destiny Marquis, I will give you another chance because of your performance today. In half a month, I will go to the Chizhou mountain range to get the origin of Taotai. Whether you can stop me or not depends on your ability. After he finished speaking, a black aura circulated, and the Nether King's body disappeared. After the Nether King left, Ningchen fell silent. After a while, a trace of blood slid down from the corner of his mouth. The divine power was hard to block. Even if he had mastered the forbidden technique and had 100 years of foundation, he still couldn't block the divine transformation technique. How are you? Xia Zi went up and asked worriedly. I'm fine. Let's go down and discuss how to deal with the Nether King, Ning Chen said seriously. Hearing the answer, everyone's heart sank. It was too little. Wanting to defeat the Nether King within 3 moves, even if he had the maximum speed, foundation, and destructive power, it would still be a pipe dream. What if we include Great Xia's 1,000 years of fortune? Xia Zi, who had been silent all this while, suddenly spoke up. 10 moves, or even more. However, if we do that, Grand Xia's luck will scatter, and it can no longer be reversed, replied Ning Chen seriously. With the current situation, we can't care about anything else. If we can send the Lord of the Abyss back, even if Great Xia perishes, it will be worth it. Xia Zi sighed. Friend, you've changed, Ning Chen said seriously. Ha! Xia Zi smiled bitterly. Perhaps. In this chaotic world, there was no room for naivety. If you wanted to gain something, you had to give it up first. It's still not appropriate. Even if Brother Ning can block the Lord of the Abyss attacks, his speed isn't fast enough, and he won't be able to break through the Lord of the Abyss 7 ultimate physique. Even if you find someone to cooperate with you, there isn't anyone in this world who has both extreme speed and the ability to break through the Lord of the Abyss protective True Yuan. Luan Fengchen raised a new unsolvable problem. Today's battle had already proven that working with many people was too slow, and it was easy to be defeated one by one. Therefore, the person who cooperated with Ning Chen had to have absolute speed and a similar foundation. Yes, and she should be arriving soon. Ning Chen looked toward the Qizhou mountain range in the north. According to the time, she should be arriving soon. At this moment, a white-clothed figure walked out of the Qizhou mountain range's final formation. With a single step, she disappeared. Her speed was shocking. Who are you talking about? Xia Zi narrowed his eyes. Mu Qingxue, replied Ning Chen. It's her. Hearing this name, a strange light flashed through Xia Zi's eyes. Mu Qingxue had cultivated the travel scroll, and her speed was indeed enough. However, with her foundation, could she break through the Lord of the Abyss protective True Yuan? Are you sure? Luan Fengchen was also worried as he asked in a serious voice. Yes. Ning Chen nodded and seriously said, Senior Dao Kuei left the last of his strength for her. Although she can only use her full strength for a limited time, she should be able to last through this battle. Absolute foundation and absolute speed are both enough. Moreover, the two of you have enough strength to deal the final blow to the Lord of the Abyss. I don't understand why you specifically emphasized absolute destructive power. Jiang Hua's eyes were filled with doubt. Hearing Jiang Hua's question, Ning Chen lightly sighed and said, This is the lesson I learned from my last battle with the martial monarch. At that time, I also believed that with speed and foundation, I would be able to defeat the martial monarch. However, in the end, the principal had to sacrifice himself and exchange his life to defeat the martial monarch. Why? Luan Fengchen asked. Timing. Ning Chen's expression was grave as he explained, no matter if it was the martial monarch or the Lord of the Abyss, we were in an absolute disadvantage. Even if we relied on external strength to forcefully pull back the balance, we still couldn't change the fact that there was a clear difference between the strong and the weak. As the battle progresses, our external strength will be greatly consumed and this gap will widen. Even if there is an opportunity to win, it will be difficult to grasp it. Therefore, we still need someone to preserve their strength as much as possible. At the crucial moment, they will be able to heavily injure the Lord of the Abyss divine body. Originally, Senior was the best choice for this person. However, Senior's injuries are not light and I'm afraid he won't be able to make it in time for this battle. After saying this, regret flashed through Ning Chen's eyes. The current situation was indeed somewhat troublesome. I'll do it, said Xia Zi. No. Luo Fei's expression changed as if she had thought of something and immediately stopped him. Good friend, have you thought about it? Ning Chen more or less thought of something and solemnly asked. This is the only way right now. Xia Zi sighed and continued, if I completely turn into a devil and endanger the Grand Xia, good friend, you don't need to be soft-hearted. Right now, the human world cannot endure any more calamities. In the end, humans were unable to compare to gods. If he wanted to have the qualifications to fight the Lord of the Abyss, he would have to draw out all the devil chi in his body and obtain a powerful combat strength for a short period of time. However, the price of doing this was very obvious. His only conscious soul would rapidly turn into a devil and lose its last bit of reason. Just as everyone was discussing this, the Lord of the Abyss appeared in Huaqing City in the southern border of the Grand Xia. His powerful divine aura spread out in all directions as he searched for the whereabouts of Yao Man and the others. His divine aura descended and doomsday arrived. All of Huaqing City violently trembled. Cracks continuously appeared in the ground and countless buildings collapsed. Sorrowful cries shook the heavens. Gods disdained to attack ordinary people, but just the divine aura that descended was not something ordinary people could endure. Tens of thousands of commoners collapsed in the calamity, never to wake up again. "Come out. We can't hide anymore," said the Lord of the Abyss indifferently as he looked at the northwest corner of Huaqing City. Yishui Han, Yao Man, Jia Feng, and Jia Yen appeared with heavy expressions. They hadn't expected that even though they had hidden so well, they would still be discovered. "Lord of the Abyss, what do you want to know?" "We can tell you," said Yao Man, suppressing her fear. "No need. Dead people are more trustworthy to me." The Lord of the Abyss raised his hand, and terrifying waves surged out. His divine aura caused heaven and earth to change color. Half of the city rapidly vanished, becoming history. The four of them hastily retreated. However, Yao Man's body had already been locked down by the divine aura. It was too late for her to dodge. With a bang, blood spurted out like a fountain. After one move, 3 calamities had died. They couldn't dodge or block it. Only death was the only result. Yao Man, Jia Yen and Jia Feng were shocked. How could this be? Don't be so shocked. Soon, you'll also join her. Before he even finished speaking, the Lord of the Abyss raised his god's hand once more. Flames immediately soared, and the heaven-incinerating flame condensed around his body. Jia Yen and Jia Feng didn't have time to dodge. The two of them joined hands to resist the heaven-incinerating flame. They were the demonic Buddha's subordinates, and they had the best understanding of each other. Their powerful palms collided with the heaven-incinerating flame, but the divine aura was unbreakable. It directly broke through their defenses and landed on their bodies. With a bang, the two of them were unable to endure the divine aura and exploded. Their blood and bones quickly turned to dust, not leaving behind the slightest trace. "The last one is you," said the Lord of the Abyss coldly. In the blink of an eye, only one of the 3 calamities remained. A god's power made it so that they couldn't even raise the will to resist. The difference between heaven and earth had long since surpassed human understanding. Yishui Han also knew he had no path to take. He raised his hand and slapped his head. Even if he died, he would destroy his divine sense to prevent the Lord of the Abyss from finding out anything. "Foolish," said the Lord of the Abyss coldly. A black aura circulated, and his figure disappeared. When he reappeared, he was already in front of Yishui Han. He raised his hand to stop Yishui Han's body, then pressed his palm on Yishui Han's head to search for what he wanted to know. As the divine aura entered his body, Yishui Han's vitality quickly dissipated. Not long after, the light in his eyes gradually dimmed and lost all its luster. Divine Palace, humans are always ignorant of the immensity of heaven and earth. The black aura dispersed, and the Lord of the Abyss figure disappeared. In a flash, he left Huaqing City. On the desolated land, numerous figures fell into the dust, no longer breathing. This disaster came so suddenly that before anyone could react, it was already over. When humans fought against the gods, the ending was always miserable. 30,000 years ago, the human world was defeated, and blood flowed like rivers in the 5 regions. 30,000 years later, the human world situation was still tragic. One expert after another fell with unwillingness and regret until they died. Mars guarded the heart, and the mortal world was dark for 100 years. Eternal night instructed that light would only come again after 100 years of darkness. However, the human world really couldn't wait for 100 years. You're tuning into the Passion Pages YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.